So to Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the Temple of Akunda, and the Temple of Akunda is in Vol'dun. It's this really cool thunder lizard temple. It's got a bunch of lightning all over. It's got really cool thunder lizard statues and monuments. It's really cool. So that's not the only reason I picked it. It actually has some really cool lore behind it as well. The temple welcomes Zandalari exiles who seek sanctuary from the dangers of Vol'dun, and through a sacred ritual, Akunda enters the minds of his followers and removes the memories that causes them pain. His followers then all rename themselves Akunda and start a new life at the temple. Northwest of the temple lies the Eternal Spring, ensuring that his followers never know thirst. Red Rock Mesa stretches north of the temple towards the Valley of Sorrows, where Akunda stores the unwanted, painful memories he takes from his followers. But this is where it starts getting crazy. So you and a bunch of NPCs travel to the temple in search of War Guard Rakera. You may have done this if you did the BFA quest line, and you may have not even known what was going on, because I know I didn't. And then you arrive there, and Akunda the Exalted greets you, and he gives you a bunch of tasks and allows you to enter the temple proper. Once inside, you discover Rakera, but find that she's lost all of her memories. Akunda the Sensible reveals that Akunda followers have started losing not only their painful memories, but all their memories, and send you to go investigate it in the Valley of Sorrows. And it turns out Akunda the Exalted poisoned the Eternal Spring, stole Akunda's memories, and used Loa's power to wipe the minds of the followers. But with the help of Akunda powers of the storm, the adventurers kill Akunda the Exiled, freeing Loa and allowing them to restore the memories of his followers. And after all this, all of the Akunda followers abandon the Akunda name and return to their true names. So, kind of a wacky, wild story. I mean, if you want to go play that quest line again, you should go check it out. But that's why the Temple of Akunda is number 10. 9. Number 9 is the Temple of the White Tiger, and the Temple of the White Tiger is an ancient training ground protected by an elite force of martial priests along with the spirit of the White Tiger itself. And whenever I see the Temple of the White Tiger, it really just reminds me of Pandaria. This was just one of those standout buildings, right? Like wherever you go, if you go to all the zones, I just remember being in Kunlai Summit and always seeing this temple because it was just high up in the mountains. It had really cool architecture, like you walk around and you can go up a little path to get to the temple, and it just stood out. And of course, being the Temple of the White Tiger, there is Xuan, which I don't think I said that right, but that was my best shot at it. The White Tiger is one of the 4 wild gods known as the August Celestials who dwell in Pandaria. Xuan watches over the Kunlai Summit from the Temple of the White Tiger and is sometimes referred to as the Northern Celestial. And in the original 4 symbols of Chinese mythology, which the August Celestials are based on, the White Tiger is in the west, not the north. So there's some fun facts about all that, and that's why the Temple of the White Tiger is number 9. 8. Number 8 is the Temple of Zin Malor, which was a once prominent Night Elven temple to worship their goddess Elune, and it actually has a very similar structure to the Temple of the Moon in Darnassus. The temple is currently occupied by the Spitelash tribe of Naga, one of which is this guy who is just standing a little awkwardly. You know, it's not the most conventional standing style, but you know what? He's doing his thing, he's having a good time, I'm not going to judge. And the Crystal of Zin Malor once rested here, but it was stolen by the inhabitants of Keltheral in Winterspring. One of my favorite parts about the Temple of Zin Malor lore, though, comes from Wowpedia, and it says the temple has at least one underground royal vault, which contains a chest of Pandaren design, the last gift the Pandaren gave the Highborn before cutting ties with the Night Elves. The Pandaren said it contained all the arcane magic the Highborn would ever need, but was in fact completely empty. The gift was actually a message of advice and wisdom to the Highborn that they did not actually need arcane magic at all. I just imagine some elf opening this up and being like, dude, where's the arcane magic? And they're like, the arcane magic is inside of you. It's the friends we made along the way. And he's just like, yeah, but really, like, where is it? I want my magic. Either way, that's the Temple of Zin Malor. It looks pretty cool, and it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is the Temple of the Red Crane, and the Temple of the Red Crane is home of the August Celestial Chi-Ji, the celestial embodiment of hope, located in south-central Krasarong Wilds. And this is one of those places that I think is a really underrated, not even just temple, but just aesthetically pleasing building, right? Like, the structures in here, phenomenal, the artwork's insane, I love the banners, the ivy on the walls, the statues, just everything about this place. Every time I would pass it, I wanted to put it in some list, and now I finally get to do that, and I'm just glad because I think this is a temple that needs it needs some love, you know? It's hidden away in the Krasarong Wilds. Not many people go to the Krasarong Wilds that often. Not many people go to the Temple of the Red Crane that often, unless you're questing there, which, you know, probably not doing that often either. So it's just a phenomenal temple. I really love it. You know, there is the crane in the middle, but don't worry, he's not dead. You and Anduin, I believe, heal him up later, and then he's fine. But overall, I mean, I just really love this temple's architecture and everything, and that's why it's number 7. 6. Number 6 is the Temple of Elune, and the Temple of Elune, according to Wowpedia, is located in Val'sharah and inhabited by the Sisterhood of Elune and the Druids of the Moon. That rhymes. The Gardens of the Moon, where the Tear of Elune was kept, extends out past the temple stairs. When Satyr and the Burning Legion attacked the temple, Celestine of the Harvest arrived to aid its priest. 2 major roads branch off of it, one leading to Blackrook Hold and another leading to Suramar, and the other Temple of Elune, now known as the Tomb of Sargeras. The Suramar road quickly splits into another road that leads into Azuna, and according to Lyanus Moonfall, the Burning Legion previously wanted to destroy the temple, indicating that it existed during the War of the Ancients. So this really is a temple with a lot of history to it, and it is just a really cool temple overall. It's got some lily pads and little moon wells. It's got ivy growing up on the pillars. It's just a very nice, aesthetically pleasing temple. And obviously, as you know, throughout Pointless Top 10, I always point out aesthetically pleasing things. But I really do enjoy, you know, finding the little details and cool architecture and, you know, just the statues. A lot of cool statues here as well. I especially like this statue where the elf is pouring the water out of the jug. I just think that's cool. And, you know, you got little like wisp stars flying around. It's a very nice place to be. Very relaxing, very calming, unless it's getting attacked by the Legion. And that's why it's number 6. 5. Number 5 is the Temple of Atal Hakar, or as some people know it, the Sunken Temple. According to Wowpedia, it's actually got some interesting history I didn't know about. So over 1,000 years ago, the powerful Gurubashi Empire was torn apart by a massive civil war. An influential group of troll priests known as the Atalai attempted to bring back the ancient blood god named Hakar. Though the priests were defeated and ultimately exiled, the great troll empire buckled in upon itself. The exiled priests fled far to the north into the Swamp of Sorrows. There they erected a great temple to Hakar where they could prepare for his arrival into the physical world. The dragon aspect Ysera learned of the Atalai's plans and smashed the temple beneath the marshes, which I would like to see happen. That sounds pretty insane. However, this actually helped the Atalai by ensuring their efforts to summon Hakar went undisturbed. So that's the lore behind the Sunken Temple, and I've never really liked the Sunken Temple because I have bad memories of running it and it just being boring and a bunch of trash mobs, but like going back and looking through it, it's actually not that bad. Like it's got some cool architecture, especially because this is from classic WoW. So we're talking like 20 years ago, right? And I mean, it's just got cool wall art, cool statues, got skulls and vines and a whole bunch of cool aesthetical things all around. It's pretty neat. And that's why I put it at number 5. 4. Number 4 is the Temple of the Moon in Darnassus, and according to Wowpedia, it's got some really cool history. So the Temple of the Moon was built around the same time as the rest of Darnassus when the Night Elves first made their home on Teldrassil. Much of the temple itself was crafted from stone brought from the mainland and transported by magical means. It would become the headquarters of the Sisterhood of Elune and the de facto capital building of Darnassus as the residence of High Priestess Tyrande Whisperwind, the legendary Kaldorei leader. And some cool little facts about it: the waters of the temple are known to be blessed, being described as the water of Elune herself. Some Horde scouts describe the temple as the most beautiful building in the city, although I thought they were going to say the most beautiful building they've ever seen, but, you know, it's still good praise, right? And the iconic statue at the center of the temple depicts Hadeen, the first High Priestess of the Moon. Before the Stormrage novel made this clarification, many players thought this was actually Elune herself. I actually talk about this a bit more in Pointless Top 10 Fountains, which you could go watch. I'll put it in the cards above if you haven't seen that. I really love the Temple of the Moon. I think it has a really nice vibe to it. You know, you have this kind of magical garden. You have the water coming down that looks very pristine and majestic. And it, you know, this really is the heart of Darnassus. However, I will say a close second is that tree that sits in the middle that's part of the bank. I think that's a pretty good landmark as well. But overall, I think the Temple of the Moon's really cool. It's got some good lore to it, and that's why it's number 4. 3. Number 3 is the Netherlight Temple, which is actually the Priest Order Hall, and I didn't even think of this one as a temple until I was researching everything. The temple is said to be hidden deep within the Twisting Nether, deep in Legion territory, and the Legion have been looking for it for ages, but were never able to find it until recently. The Netherlight was originally a prison built by the Draenei during their exile in order to contain and study the Void God known as Soraka the Light Eater. It was also built as a place to commune with the Naru, ponder the nature of the Twisting Nether, and conduct research into the Void. But the main reason I put it here on the list is I think it's a really beautiful temple. The stained glass windows up there, it's got all these different purples and blues and, you know, bright yellows and everything. It's got all the different priests walking around, so it is very temple-esque. You have the actual Naru thingies floating around. I already forgot what those are called. But I really just love a lot of the stuff in here. It's a really big temple. I especially like the Void area where there's all the different candles and you see like there's just, you know, hundreds and thousands of candles all over. It looks really cool. And I really like the way the sunbeam or the sun shaft or whatever is like shining through the ceiling, even though I don't know how that's even happening because we're in the Void or whatever. But I guess, you know, it's the light, right? So maybe the light is doing that, like the actual order of the light, not like light they generate. I don't even know. I don't know how any of it really works, to be honest, but I just think it looks cool. And I actually really enjoyed this order hall back when I was a priest coming here. So that's why I put it at number 3. Number 2 is the Black Temple / the Temple of Karabor. And before the shattering of Draenor, the Black Temple was once called the Temple of Karabor, a sacred site to the Draenei, which served as the refuge of Prophet Velen. And if you go to Draenor, or I guess you can still go to Draenor, you can see there it is, the Temple of Karabor. You can walk around as it used to be, see what it used to look like, and, you know, really appreciate it before you go to the Black Temple and go, wow, this place got destroyed. But still, I mean, people remember the Black Temple for the raid. They remember it for the entire Burning Crusade expansion. You know, you always knew about the Black Temple. You saw it. You heard Illidan being like, you are not prepared, right? That was the whole thing. And so being able to go there and raid the Black Temple, I think a lot of people have nostalgia of it. And I'm not going to lie, when I was making this list, I didn't even think of this because I almost didn't consider it a temple, which sounds kind of dumb, but I was like, wait a second. The Black Temple / Temple of Karabor. That's like one of the most prominent temples in the game. So I was like, how can I not include that in the list? And a fun little fact here was in the Frozen Throne, the Black Temple was called the Black Citadel, and it was actually situated in the Hellfire Peninsula instead of Shadow Moon Valley. So fun little fact there, but you know, I had to put it on the list. It's so notorious. I had to put it way up there, and that's why it's number 2. And number 1 is the Temple of Kimbul, or Kimbul, whichever it is. I love his temple. It is easily one of my favorite temples in the game. I mean, you might even say it's my favorite because it's number 1 on this list. I really love this temple. It is the temple that made me want to make this list because I remember flying around and seeing this and I was like, dude, temples. I love the tiger head entrance. I love the moss growing everywhere, the trees kind of overtaking it, the rocks and the pathway leading up there. It's like my favorite aesthetic, you know, the dim lighting with like the blue, purplish, orange glowiness. Like I love everything about it. And if you're curious about some lore behind the temple, pretty much the Temple of Kimbul centuries ago was attacked by an army of Naga led by summoner Mapilja. Kimbul arrived too late to save his Zandalari worshippers from death, and as he killed Mapilja, she cursed the souls of his followers to unending torment. Now the temple lies abandoned and broken, and its entrance sealed by a magical barrier that only opens to whoever holds the Ring of Tides. Seeking refuge from the Stormcoil Naga, the Tortolans travel to the temple to seek Kimbul's protection. You obtain the Ring of Tides and enter the temple, but Kimbul informs you that honor would now not allow him to accept new followers until the souls of his original worshippers were freed from the curse. With Kimbul's help, the adventurer travels through the spirit realm, vanquishes Mapilja's spirit, freeing Kimbul's followers, and at the same time, the Naga attack the temple, but Kimbul transformed the adventurer into his avatar in order to fight off the invaders. Once the assault was repelled, Kimbul accepts the Tortaka followers and allows them to move into the temple and use it as refuge. So that's why you see a bunch of Tortolan over here. And overall, I mean, that's some cool lore, but I really just like the way it looks. I'm not gonna lie. And that's why it's number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you want to check out some other Pointless Top 10s, we had Pointless Top 10 Squirrels in World of Warcraft just last week, and we also have Pointless Top 10 Weirdest NPCs if you want to see some weird NPCs. Okay? Okay. See ya. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is No Arm the Squirrel, and No Arm the Squirrel is located in the SI-7 part of Old Town in Stormwind, and he is with Doc Mixel-Pixel, who I guess is his owner or something. I have no idea, but Doc Mixel-Pixel's a gnome that helps Alliance rogues, or he used to help Alliance rogues affected by the touch of Zanzel. But here's the thing, No Arm the Squirrel has arms. Why is he named No Arm? There's really no lore behind it. I couldn't find anything. There is a possibility maybe this guy gave him prosthetic squirrel arms or something. But if he did, they have to be some amazing prosthetics because he just looks like he's a, regular squirrel. So there's kind of a mystery behind this one, but I mean, at the end of the day, he is just a squirrel named No Arm, but I guess we'll never know anything more than that. He might just also have a weird spelling of his name, and it's actually Norm, and people think it's No Arm, but it's actually Norm the Squirrel. That's another possibility, but, I don't think we're going to get too much of a deep dive into Norm, No Arm squirrel lore, so that's number 10. 9. Number 9 are the Dappled Hoarder Squirrels, and Dappled Hoarder Squirrels are located in the heart of the forest in Ardenweld and various other spots of Ardenweld, and they're just cool looking. They have tails made out of leaves. If you look real closely, you'll see they have a bunch of leaves for tails, or at least, tails that look like leaves. It's probably more like a camouflage thing. They got these crazy, they're almost like fox Volparen types of ears, and then they have these big glowy yellow eyes. So they're just really cool looking squirrels, and they're not, they don't have any named character squirrels, they don't have any crazy stuff, but this is what this series is all about. It's about finding the little things and giving them some love, and that's why the Dappled Hoarders are number 9. 8. Number 8 is Kebab Nibbles, and Kebab Nibbles is a squirrel that sits on top of Conan the Dogbarian's head in the Nayeli Lagoon in Krasarong Wilds. And this is just a weird one, because there's no comments about Conan the Dogbarian or Kebab Nibbles. I figured somebody would comment on Conan the Dogbarian, but there's nothing on Wowhead. There's really nothing on Wowpedia outside of what I just told you, and it's, like, I don't know. I mean, Conan the Dogbarian is clearly a reference to Conan the Barbarian, and maybe Kebab Nibbles is a reference to, like, the person who thought up Conan the Dogbarian and put him in the game. They're like, I'm gonna be on his head as a squirrel, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, something like that. But outside of that, I got nothing, man. There's just some Pandaren sitting around fishing, which is great. And, I don't know. I like to think that maybe they were both out in the wild and they just stumbled across each other and became animal friends. You know how, like, in cartoons and stuff that happens? So maybe that's what happened here, the adventures of Kebab and Conan. The adventures of Kebab and Conan will be right back after you hit the like button and subscribe. Sorry, that was terrible. We gotta move on. That was number 8. 7. Speaking of squirrels that are standing on top of other animals, we've got Junkie Mo at number 7. And Junkie Mo is a squirrel in the Eye of Azshara that is initially captured by the Violet Sail pirates and held in a pet cage. And you rescue it, and after you rescue Junkie Mo, he's seen standing on top of Speedy 4, which is the turtle's name. These are just phenomenal names. Also, I think Junkie Mo is just either really dirty or he's, like, on fire because he's just got steam coming from him. Like, how Pigpen from Peanuts Snoopy has all the dust clouds all around him. So I don't know if he's like that because, maybe he's like junkies all dirty and stuff, or like if he's just the squirrel that's got steam coming off him. I have no idea. I would say the first one's probably more plausible, but the whole quest chain is that you help all these animals get away from the pet poaching pirates, and then you bring them back to Dalaran, and that's that. But overall, it's a weird little quest line and a weird thing to find in World of Warcraft, but just the fact that this squirrel is named Junkie Mo is good enough for me to put him at number 7. 6. Number 6 are the squirrels from the Aw Nuts World Quest in Val'Sharah. And if you're wondering why the footage here looks very suspicious, it's because we couldn't actually get the world quest to happen in time for the filming of this and recording. And it was like, well, we got to improvise, right? Because you can't just have pointless top 10 with no footage. So here we are. If you've been on this channel long enough, you're used to this type of thing. So Celestine of the Harvest says, what jokester spreads so many acorns around Lorlathil? I realize this task is of the humble variety, but could you relocate some of those squirrels and crack a few nuts while you're at it? And as you can see, here's some screenshots from Wowhead of the squirrels taking over the house and the inn or whatever it is, and then some squirrels on the lamppost. There's one of the acorn nuts that you have to crack. And yeah, you know, that's pretty much it. It's a big squirrel takeover of the town, and you got to help relocate the squirrels, move them around. It's a fun little goofy world quest, and that's why it's number 6. 5. Number 5 is Chufa, and Chufa is a soul shape in the form of a squirrel located in Ardenweld. And I believe this is the only soul-shaped squirrel in the game, unless I'm crazy, which it's quite possible. But a soul shape, if you don't know, is an ability unlocked for members of the Night Fae Covenant. It changes the player's form into that of an animal, blinks them a distance forward, and temporarily increases their movement speed. Critter shapes are smaller soul shape forms that are activated when it's used in a rest area, and Chufa handles the critter shapes, giving you the options to swap forms and even deactivate critter shape effects. And since the arrival of the first mortal soul to Ardenweld, the Winter Queen has granted the boon of soul shaping to the souls who join her realm so that they may tend to the forest even without a mortal body. According to Talora, the Night Elf Wisps are a type of soul shape. And Chufa is just a good guy. He looks out for his other soul-shaped friends. He helps you out, and he's just, you know, he's just friendly. And that's why he's number 5. 4. Number 4 are the angry little squirrels, and you might have guessed it. They're angry little squirrels. They're quite little, actually. They're smaller than most other squirrels. They're very angry, and they have one ability, which is Angry Little Acorn. Viciously throw an acorn at your target, dealing 0 damage. And so the way it works is the elementals come up, and then they just start throwing their acorns at them, like, hey, get out of here. And, you know, they're not doing any damage. Literally, they're doing 0 damage, but they're also part of the achievement, and the meek shall inherit Kalimdor, along with the Alpine Songbird, Hygel Bear Cubs, and Child of Tortola. And that's where you help each of the following critters get revenge on the mean old fire elementals. Hey, you know what? They're contributing. They're trying. And sometimes trying's half the battle, right? So I appreciate these angry little squirrels, even though they are really not doing that much. They're giving it their all. They're fighting for their land, dude. They want this forest, and they're not going to give it up without a fight. And that's why they're number 4. 3. It's broken free. Run for your lives. It's nuts. Number 3 is Nuts. Nuts is a mechanical squirrel that is summoned at the secret lab in Azshara. And in order for hunters to tame this pet, you actually have to have the Mecha Bond Imprint Matrix or be a gnome/goblin. There's also this whole process you have to go through to summon Nuts, which is you have to read this book, and then you have to activate the thorium manifold and the antimatter containment and the flux containment release and the hydrosync router, and then Nuts will spawn. Everyone freaks out, and he just looks around like a normal squirrel. But he's not a normal squirrel. He's a robot, and he's Nuts. And I never even knew about Nuts, but now that I know about Nuts, I actually really want him as a pet. I think it'd be really cool to have a robot squirrel pet, you know? So maybe in my WoW leveling series, we'll actually go and tame Nuts. And that'll probably add on like another 2 years to my WoW leveling series. But I think it'll be worth it. Plus, I think Nuts is just, you know, he's a cool robot squirrel. He's got the green eyes, he's got the metal tail, he's got all the bolts and stuff. And for being a robot squirrel, he actually has a lot of fluid movements. Like, he moves really well. It's almost like he's the normal squirrel with a skin over the top of him.
Thanks.
But that can't be it. And that's why he's number 3. 2. Number 2 are the carnivorous squirrels in the Gloomshade Grove in Shadowmoon Valley, and they are guarding the Bubbling Cauldron, which contains a void-boiled squirrel and 10 to 20 garrison resources. Hooray. The void-boiled squirrel is actually an offhand that I think looks like a squirrel. I didn't actually look if it looks like a squirrel. Now I kind of want to see it. Does it look like a squirrel? It does not. What the shit is this? Why doesn't it look like a squirrel? I guess it's like, it's a little like cauldron thing with some bones in it. That should be a squirrel. That's yeah, the top comments, this is not actually a squirrel. I am disappointed. That's a missed opportunity, Blizzard. All right, can we please get that patched up? But anyway, these squirrels are actually insane. There's like a bunch of dead squirrels all over. They're like eating each other. They're eating you. They're attacking you. They just keep coming in droves. And it's pretty insane. Apparently, these are most notable for lovely charm collector's kits, but as of February 2016, they no longer give any charms. I can see why. You would just go in here and they just keep spawning and spawning, but It's still pretty insane. I never even knew about this, and if I did do the quest back in the day, I blocked it out of my mind, but it's pretty wild. So I had to put this way up high on the list, and that's why it's number 2. And number 1 is Scholar, and Scholar is a human located in the Tannin jungle, and he sits on a wagon surrounded by squirrels who he occasionally throws nuts to, and if you talk to him, he pelts you in the face with several nuts before realizing you're not a squirrel and says, "Oh, hello, friend. Even in the heart of a war-torn jungle, it's important to take care of the little ones. Hey, come here. Since you took the time to say hello, would you like a gift?" And he gives you a Scholar's bag of squirrel treats, and you can use it to feed the squirrels. And I was like, dude, this guy's awesome. And then I saw that it's a tribute to Scott Collar, a veteran Blizzard employee who passed away from cancer. And then I was like, oh, this is really sad. But still, what a tribute for him, man. He gets to live on feeding the squirrels and handing out bags of squirrel treats. So rest in peace, Scott. And make sure you go get your own Scholar's bag of squirrel treats today and feed some squirrels. And that's why Scholar is number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Also, if you want to see some other Pointless Top 10s, you can check out Pointless Top 10 Weirdest NPCs in World of Warcraft and Pointless Top 10 Volcanoes in World of Warcraft. And there's a bunch of other Pointless Top 10s that aren't even listed here. Okay? Okay. See you. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is Victor Ebenfall, and Victor is a Worgen druid in the first aid place in Dalaran, and he's just chilling in a bathtub. You walk in here and you look around and you're like, what? Is that a sea lion in the bathtub? But apparently he can't shapeshift out of aquatic form. If you talk to him, he says, "What are you looking at? Ain't you ever seen a sea lion before?" And you go, "Not like this." And he goes, "Yes, I'm a druid, and well, I'm kind of stuck like this for a while. I was patrolling the sea around the broken shore when an infernal crashed down into the water right on top of me. The blast was so strong it instantly knocked me unconscious. When I woke up, I was here in the care of the nurses. They say after a few days I should have the strength to shift back, but in the meantime, I'm stuck in this contraption to keep me from drying out. Do me a favor and don't mention this to any of the other druids. They'll never let me live it down." So yeah, that's pretty much it. He's just a druid stuck in aquatic form in a bathtub. And great shower curtains there, by the way. Very good. And that's number 10. 9. Number 9 is Arako the Hunter, and Arako is an orc hunter down in Vazgir just hunting fish. And for some reason, everything's going real fast down here. I don't know why. I don't know if we've gone like deep enough to where the laws of physics change, but something's going on. But I think it's funny because Arako kind of reminds me of Billy, the my WoW Machinima orc hunter. But there's a quest where a guy's like, "Hey, can you go find Arako? He seems to be missing and it's weird to send someone to go find them, but I'm running out of options." And you go find Arako and he is just hunting fish. And the reason for this is that his pet wolf got eaten by an eel and he won't go anywhere until she is safe. He also has the quote of, "Shooting fish in a barrel is easy. Shooting fish in an ocean is a little harder." So yeah, that's just Arako. You know, he's definitely not your run-of-the-mill NPC. This guy was pretty weird, and I haven't seen too much about him. You know, maybe it's because nobody really quests in Vazgir that often, but I think he definitely deserves to be on the list, and that's why he's number 9. 8. Number 8 is Silvermoon Harry, and Silvermoon Harry is a pirate who can be found at Scalawag Point, and he has an obsession with blood elves. It is really weird. So Alanya is his girlfriend, and if you talk to her, she says, "This is the only way Harry will ever talk to me. I have to keep this stupid mask on all the time." Which, listen, if that was a real life thing, you got to get out of there. That's a big red flag. And then Silvermoon Harry has to repay his debt, which is why you go talk to him, and he tries to fight you, and he's like, "Do not test me, scurvy dog. I'm trained in the ways of the Blood Knights." Which, if you don't know what a Blood Knight is, it's a Blood Elf Paladin, pretty much. And then he talks about how Blood Elf treasures, unlike any other, it's not just the gold or the silk or the gems used as materials. Sindori craftsmanship is valuable in and of itself. And so after that, you're like, all right, well, that guy was weird, but I'm never going to see him again. But then he reappears in Battle for Azeroth, where Harry is hired by the Alliance to help establish Fort Victory in Nazmir on Zandalar, and he's tricked into believing he'd be working with Blood Elves, but instead it was Blood Trolls. So overall, this guy's weird as shit. That's why he's number 8. 7. Number 7 is Idej the Wise, and Idej is a gnome mage in Drustvar, and he just lives randomly in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. I remember finding this guy being like, wait, who is this? Why haven't I seen this before? And I guess because I haven't really quested much in Drustvar, but he constantly just walks around a campfire talking to Tap-Taff, pausing to unsuccessfully test a fire spell on it. And once you kill him, you can actually get the Tap-Taff the Pig quest, which gives you Tap-Taff the Pig as a pet. So if you haven't gotten that yet, there you go. I just got you a free pet. And so while researching this, I was like, this is so weird. What does this even mean? So I found on Wowhead, somebody commented named Idej the Wise, and they said, hey, World of Warcraft fans, a message to all the players who found Idej the Wise and his little piglet friend Tap-Taff. I would like to thank everybody. 6 years ago, my brother and I came up for the concept for Idej the Wise one afternoon at Blizzard Studios. His brother works for Blizzard, and the idea was Idej was going to be a very small in stature with a bit of a punch fire mage who likes to drink and cast mixed up spells. Idej is actually Jedi, but spelled backwards. And Idej is actually an old modified AD&D character they created 38 years ago in 1985. And they are lucky to have him put in the expansion of the game back when I guess BFA was the expansion. So that was it. That's pretty much the lore of Idej. You can read more about him if you go over there and read about him or just research it. But I just think he's weird, right? He's just this random gnome mage in the mountains. He's got a bunch of animals all around. There's like a raccoon in his bed. It's just like, what's going on over here? But I love it. I think it's, you know, it kind of reminds me of in the Hobbit, the Radagast the Brown a little bit, just having all these animals in his house and stuff. Although he is trying to like cast spells on them instead of actually saving them or whatever. But overall, he's pretty weird, and that's why he's number 7. 6. Number 6 is Gordon McKellar, the assistant confetti cannon operator in Stormwind. And, you know, at first you're like, okay, whatever. He's just some random guy working on fireworks. But then he starts swimming around, and that is really what pushed it over the edge for me. Like, at first I was like, all right, you know, this guy is a little weird, but then you see him start swimming around, and it's like, there's so many questions. How does he do this, right? Like, does he have some sort of evil powers? And he might, actually, because he is here because he drops the Doomsayer robes, and you disguise yourself as a Doomsayer for an hour. It's a toy that you can get. There's actually another version for the Horde, and that would be Charles Ghastly, an undead, but I don't think that guy swims around, so he's definitely not as weird. So the fact that he's swimming around is what really bothers me, right? It's just like, how is he doing it? I'm genuinely interested in how he is able to swim around, because I feel like I haven't seen really anybody else in the history of World of Warcraft just swimming around like they're in space. You know what I mean? So for that reason alone, I felt he had to be on the list, and that's why he's number 6. 5. Number 5 is Dude Brule, and Dude Brule is a Drogbar that wanders around the Stone Dark Grotto in High Mountain with his right fist up, and adventurers can fist bump him to receive the 1-hour fist bump buff, the description of which reads, fist bumped a Brule. Nice. This is like the good kind of weird, right? Like Silvermoon Harry was the bad kind of weird, but this guy is the good kind of weird. He just walks around trying to fist bump everybody. He's trying to improve that morale. Like, this guy should have his own achievement. You know what I mean? Like, this should be an achievement of go fist bump Dude Brule, because this is like a necessary task that every World of Warcraft player should do. And I really do love the fact that this is just his entire existence. He just wants to walk around, just fist bump some people, improve the morale, and just make everybody happier. It's like, yo, what's up, man? Fist bump, right? Like, I feel like Dude Brule is the type of guy that would love to be a greeter at Walmart, you know? Like, he gets older, he doesn't really care about making money or do anything. He just wants to make people happy, right? You walk in, he's like, yo, what's up, man? Fist bump. Like, that's the vibe I get from him. And so, even though he's weird, he's a good kind of weird, and that's why Dude Brule is number 5. 4. Number 4 is Zenkiki, and Zenkiki is a troll druid that's an initiate of the Cenarian Circle, and you receive a quest to go help him essentially learn how to become a druid and how to, like, play his class, right? So you take him out into the wild to kill some plagued animals, and he is really struggling. He turns into cat form and he just starts leaping all over and roaring and meowing and hitting everything but the enemy. And then he turns into a bear and he's unsure if he's even hitting the target. And then he turns into his aquatic form and he's stuck on his back and he needs you to help push him over. But I think my favorite one is when he goes into boomkin form and he just spam moonfires himself. And it genuinely made me laugh out loud because I was like, what is going on? So you might be thinking, okay, well, this guy's just some dumb troll druid, just like the hunter we saw in Vaz'jir, right? But Zenkiki's actually done a lot. He helped defend Sethria's roost on Mount Hyjal against the minions of Ragnaros. He was sent as an investigator of the primals by the Cenarian Circle, although he said he had trouble getting his flight form to work. He appeared in the Dream Grove when Malfurion named a new Archdruid, although when everybody celebrated by turning into bears, cats, moonkins, or flight forms, he transformed into a lion seal. But then he becomes an assistant to the Archdruid in order to learn, and in BFA, he was part of the dual Cenarian Circle Earthen Ring forces, aiding Magni Bronzebeard to heal Silithus from the wounds champion. And in Dragonflight, he joined the Dragonscale expedition and traveled to the Shady Sanctuary in the Onaran plains of the Dragon Isles, where he can be seen speaking with Thistlee Crow. And so even though he's a weird NPC, he's made quite the journey and quite the progress, and that's why he's number 4. 3. Number 3 is Phil Gresham, and he's a vendor in Borealis that sells shoes, but he also will shine your shoes, and he just really creeps me out. I'm not gonna lie. So one thing I thought was that he had really tiny feet, and I was like, that's really weird. Like, he sells shoes, he shines shoes, but he has these really tiny feet or tiny boots. But it turns out, I think his feet are just clipped into the ground, because when I look up actual pictures of him, it looks like he has normal sized feet. And then when you talk to him, he just sounds completely wasted. He's just like, oh, bits and bobs is all be wasted. Right? It's just, I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, he really just kind of creeps me out. I contemplated putting him higher up on the list because I'm like, he's not as weird as some of these other people, but like the vibe he gives off is just this really weird vibe. So it's a bit of an unconventional one, but I still wanted to put him on the list, and because of how weird he is to me, I put him at number 3. 2. Number 2 is Grifta, and Grifta is actually one of the most reoccurring NPCs in the entire game, appearing in every expansion except for Wrath of the Lich King. And Grifta is pretty much a scam artist that just is constantly trying to screw people over. According to Wowpedia, Grifta was initially located in the lower city markets of Shatrath, trying to sell his wares to unsuspecting bypassers, and early on he was standing next to Peacekeeper Jadar, who often contradicted and questioned Grifta's claims about his wares, leading to amusing conversations. But for a short time, Grifta was exiled from the city due to the endless reports of his shady business practices. However, when Zulaman was rediscovered, Grifta was let back into Shatrath. In Cataclysm, Grifta started selling his stuff at the Darkmoon Fair. In Pandaria, he was at the Grummel Bazaar and Kunlai Summit. In Draenor, he actually traveled to Draenor and sold some of his useless junk to garrison troops in Talador, and there's a standing order to rough him up a bit in order to get a refund. In Legion, he's in the Hall of Shadows, which is the Rogue Order Hall. In BFA, he travels to Dazar Alor in Zuldazar, where he sells his wares on the port of Zandalar. Somehow, he then made it into Shadowlands, where he's in the Broker's Den of Oribos, and in Dragonflight, he is found selling his amulets and other goods on the sly at the Obsidian Throne in the Waking Shores. So Grifta is easily one of the most notorious weird NPCs in World of Warcraft, and because of that, I had to put him at number 2. 1. And number 1 is Bud Nedrek, which is obviously a play on words for redneck. And in Burning Crusade, he was the well-spoken, often snooty explorer that Grifta sent players to just outside Zulaman. Grifta's note was short and to the point. It said, "Listen up, bud. This be the last fool I send till ya pay me all ya be owing. No more stalling." So he owed Grifta a bunch of money, apparently. And so the main thing is Bud is looking for treasure, and he knows Zulaman probably has a bunch of treasure in it, and so he pretty much wants the players to go into Zulaman and do all the dirty work for him. Then, in Wrath of the Lich King, Bud and his band of treasure seekers and troll slayers have moved on to Grizzly Hills in search of new profits, but his fate at Zulaman had an unfortunate side effect, which is Bud pretty much lost his mind and thought he was a troll complete with a troll mask. His band of cohorts, not wanting to leave Bud behind, use him as troll bait by using his fragile state of mind to sick him on the local trolls of the area. Bud thought he's playing troll tag, but mostly what he was doing was knocking trolls silly with a frying pan, all while happily shouting "tag" to any he happened to hit. And then you think he's done after he thinks he's a troll and he's gone crazy, but he actually makes an appearance in Cataclysm, where his ship gets sunk in Vaz'jir at the opening sequence for that zone. He also appears in the Thistle Shrub Valley of Tanaris near the entrance of Uldum along with Adara, and Bud and the others were planning to drive a caravan into Uldum to search for artifacts, but they get ambushed by some pygmy, and Bud actually concocts a crazy plan to get the team and a Ramkahen prince out of Tolvir City, which actually works. And that's pretty much the story of Bud Nedrek. He also appears in your garrison for a little bit, whatever. But he's just a really weird NPC that has this crazy backstory, right? Like he's in Burning Crusade. He's got a note from Grifta to repay his debt, but he becomes this big thing in Zulaman where he's hunting treasure. And then he's in Wrath of the Lich King hitting trolls. He thinks he's a troll. Then he's like saving everybody in Cataclysm. Like, it's so weird. And I really do think he's like one of the most notorious weird NPCs in World of Warcraft. And for that reason, he's number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to be notified when I upload. Also, you can check out some other Pointless Top 10s. We just had volcanoes the other week. We just had houses in the middle of nowhere. Also, you can check out Zygor in the description. Use code Crendor for 20% off an elite subscription. Okay? Okay. See ya. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is Thunder Peak, which is the volcano in Ashenvale near the remains of Iris Lake and home to Lord Magmathar, who sits atop this volcano and is a fire elemental yelling a bunch of random quotes such as, "The earthen ring cannot withstand my fury. Ashenvale will burn. There is no escape. There is only the fiery embrace of my lava." So he's pretty mad. And he's the one who caused this volcano to erupt. I mean, he's got the whole forest burning. He's got his minions going around burning stuff. So, I mean, he did what he set out to do, and he created a volcano in the process. So, I mean, for all those reasons alone, it may not be the greatest volcano, but you know what? It's a volcano, and that's why it's number 10. 9. Number 9 is the Hand of Gul'dan volcano, which is this massive volcano west of the Black Temple in Shadow Moon Valley that was raised up by, as you might have guessed, Gul'dan. And there's actually some interesting lore behind this. So, according to Wowpedia, and according to the Earthen Ring, this volcano was raised by Gul'dan himself when he severed the connection between the Orcish people and the elemental spirits of Draenor through the words of the Cipher of Damnation, which were used against Cyruk the Fire Lord, I don't know how you say that name, and the volcano now dominates much of the landscape in the valley. The truth is, it always existed, and the spell that severed the connection to the elements also turned the volcano fell. A vision of this act is repeatedly depicted at the Altar of Damnation near the Fell Pits on the volcano's western face. Alternate Gul'dan tried to create the volcano as well in alternate Shadow Moon Valley, but was stopped. And during the Second War, Gul'dan compared raising the broken shore from the oceanic floor to raising the volcano from the ground of Shadow Moon Valley. So, really cool lore behind this volcano. I love the atmosphere, the aesthetic of everything. You got the rocks falling in the sky, you got the fell lava all around, and it's pretty cool. But, you know what? I think there are some better volcanoes, so that's why I put it at number 9. I'm sorry, Gul'dan. It's still a cool volcano. 8. Number 8 is the Bleeding Mountain volcano, which is a subzone in Frostfire Ridge, and it's a large volcano next to the Thunder Pass and inhabited by Fire Fury giants. I actually like the name for the volcano, the Bleeding Mountain, because it pretty much is what a volcano is, right? Like a bleeding mountain. I never thought of it that way. So it's a cool volcano, but there's no crazy lore or anything behind it. It's just kind of a volcano in Frostfire Ridge. You know what? Sometimes that's fine, right? Especially in Pointless Top 10, you know, not everything needs to be crazy. It doesn't need any big lore backstory. Sometimes it's just like, man, that's a cool volcano. We need to appreciate that. And I figured this would be a good time to learn a bit about volcanoes. Volcanoes are openings or vents where lava, small rocks, and steam erupt onto the Earth's surface. As for what causes volcanoes to erupt, the melted rock or magma is lighter than the surrounding rock and rises up. This magma collects in magma chambers, but it's still miles below the surface. When enough magma builds up in the magma chamber, it forces its way up to the surface and erupts, often causing volcanic eruptions, or I guess in Ashenvale's case, a fire elemental just wanted it to happen. Overall, great volcano, a lot of smoke on this one if you see all that over there, and it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is the Inferno Peak, which is a large area of fell volcanoes in the eastern section of Mardoom, and several areas like Forge of Corruption, the Doom Fortress, and Illidari Foothold are located here, and it's also the starting area for Demon Hunters. Honestly, I like this fell volcano area, and when I see the Inferno Peak, I really just think of the Gul'dan volcano, but like more updated, more of them, and just, you know, just fresher, more vibrant. You know, it doesn't have that Gul'dan backstory, but Mardoom in itself has a bunch of lore behind it. And I mean, just looking around at all these volcanoes and all the fell lava and everything, it just looks really cool. And, you know, I never really see people mention the Demon Hunter starting area that much, at least not since Legion. And it's kind of cool to go back and see a lot of the cool stuff that is and was there. So I really enjoy seeing all these fell volcanoes, all this fell lava there. It's pretty cool. You know, it really is, I feel like, an updated version of the Gul'dan volcano. And that's why it's number 7. 6. Number 6 is the Obsidian Dragon Shrine volcano. And I'm going to read a bit about this from Wowpedia, because I think it does a better job describing it than I will. It is the Black Dragonflight's dragon shrine located at the base of a volcano in northwestern Dragonblight. The shrine is as barren and blasted as the Ruby Dragon Shrine is lush, its skeletal trees perpetually burning and magma surging just below the skin of the land. While its location at the foot of a volcano reflects the earth-warding duty afforded to the Black Dragonflight and the potent energies within the earth, its constant smoldering nature is also reflective of the Dragonflight's destructive nature and is likely not due to the actions of the Scourge. Because during the war against the Lich King, adventurers were sent here by Bitter Nalist to aid Serenar in removing the invading Scourge, as this charred site is a sacred place for the Black Dragons. So there's some lore information behind the Obsidian Dragon Shrine volcano, and I mean, really, I think this is just cool. Like, you get to walk into a volcano, which is pretty sick. It almost looks like you're walking into a dragon mouth, and then the lava is kind of like chunking down, and I feel like this is more natural to how lava actually moves, you know what I mean? So, I mean, really cool aesthetic. There's like dead dragons and stuff in here, and it has some cool lore behind it. So that's why it's number 6. 5. Number 5 is Fire Plume Peak, and Fire Plume Peak is a volcano in the northwesternmost part of the Molten Front in the Firelands, and this is actually where Firehawks make their home, and the Firehawk matriarch and her eggs can be found at the top, while lava elementals roam around the base. And it's honestly just really cool. I mean, if you look at some of the things here, there's actually these wind currents all over, and you run into the wind currents, and then it goes woo, and it shoots you up. And you can get to different parts of the volcano, and you can get to these platforms as well. And the platforms are really cool because they're like crumbling apart. And I just love how the rock kind of crumbles because it's an animation I don't really see a lot in World of Warcraft. Like, this is one of the only times I've seen this animation. So I think this is really cool. And I never even knew this thing existed. I mean, I kind of did back in Cataclysm, but I think I played this like once or twice, and then I just repressed it, as most people do with Cataclysm and, you know, some of the other expansions. But this is one of those things where you go back and you're like, dude, this is pretty sick. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's one of 10 volcanoes. There's like, I think there's actually 11 or 12 volcanoes in World of Warcraft. And so this list was pretty easy to compile, but actually sorting them out from like 1 to 10 was kind of tricky. But I thought this one was cool enough to be right in the middle, and that's why it's number 5. 4. Number 4 is Scale Cracker Peak, and this is Dragonflight, everybody. You can tell because it actually looks probably like the best volcano we're going to look at today. It's just, you know, graphically, the lava looks amazing, the mountain looks amazing. This is actually where you get one of the dragon glyphs for dragon flying. It's all the way up at the top. You go to the top, you get it. So everybody, if you played Dragonflight and you got all your dragon glyphs, you've been to Scale Cracker Peak. So there's a fun little fact for you. But overall, I mean, this volcano is just awesome. Like, you got all the lava streams flowing down. You got the frogs just chilling out by the lava. You got the birds flying around, which, by the way, those birds are so annoying. I had to do the engineering quest where you have to collect their feathers, or I don't remember what it was, but it's an extremely low drop rate. It's annoying. They're annoying to kill. The phoenixes, they come back to life, and then you have to kill them again, and they don't even give you anything the second time around. It's dumb. I hate those birds. But you know what? They're flying around Scale Cracker Peak, which is an awesome volcano. And I don't even know if it's like multiple volcanoes, but it does kind of look like it. But I mean, overall, just really neat. And I had to put it on the list just because it's new, and there's very limited amounts of volcanoes in the game anyway, as I mentioned before. So that's why it's number 4. 3. And number 3 is Black Rock Mountain. And you had to know Black Rock Mountain was going to be on this list, right? But the mountain is actually a volcano that was created at the end of the War of the Three Hammers when the Dark Iron Lord Tharazan accidentally summoned Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, from his prison in the Firelands. The power unleashed by his rebirth was so massive it shattered a large section of the Red Ridge Mountains, creating the areas now known as the Searing Gorge and Burning Steppes, creating the Black Rock Mountain. Ragnaros enslaved the Dark Iron Dwarf clan, and they have built a giant city made of tunnels throughout the mountain. The name Black Rock Mountain and Black Rock Spire predates the coming of the orcs. So, some fun lore facts about Black Rock Mountain, and it's been here as long as World of Warcraft has existed. So, I mean, I was trying to figure out where to put Black Rock Mountain here, and to me, it's in the top 3, right? I think it could be number 1, but I think the next 2 are just a little more interesting to me, but Black Rock Mountain is probably the most notable of all the volcanoes in World of Warcraft, and that's why it's number 3. Number 2 is the Lost Peak, which is the giant volcano at the center of the Lost Isles. It has a massive caldera in which there is another smaller one. And for everybody wondering what a caldera is, which is me up until I read what it was, a large volcanic crater, especially one formed by a major eruption leading to the collapse of the mouth of the volcano. Then, the fire turtle, Volcanoth, lived in its lair inside of the volcano. The goblins that got stranded on the Lost Isle built a mine on its northern foothills, and after Volcanoth's death, Lost Peak erupted, destroying much of the Lost Isles. And as you can see, there's a lot of turtles just chilling out here, and they're like shooting fire from their neck. I don't even know how they're doing that, but they must have some super volcanic powers or something, because look at that, they're crazy. I also wanted to take the time to mention Mount Kajaro, which is the Isle of Kazan's still active volcano, and it's only available in the actual Cataclysm trailer. It's not actually in the game, but I wanted to do a little reference since that's also tied into the goblins, so I figured we'd do a little 2-for-1. That's why I want to put them at number 2, because during Cataclysm, Deathwing attacked Mount Kajaro, setting it alight, causing it to become active again and later erupt, destroying Bilgewater Port and possibly other parts of the island. Jaster Gallywix also considers it a possibility that his cartel's deep digging into Kazan may have contributed to the volcano's eruption. And Mount Kajaro is a reference to Mount Kilimanjaro, so a lot of goblin volcano stuff here, but that's why Lost Peak and Mount Kajaro are number 2. And number 1 is the Fire Plume Ridge, and this is the volcano in the center of Ungoro Crater. And whenever I think of a World of Warcraft volcano, like if you were like, name a volcano off the top of your head, I'd be like, oh, Fire Plume Ridge. Just, I don't know why. It's just, that's my go-to volcano whenever I think of it. And I think because you do some quests there way back in the day, it just got like hardwired in my brain or something. Like I still remember taking that goblin back home. You gotta like keep throwing water at him and he's like, ah! And then you have to like measure the temperature of the actual thing. You have to measure Kraken height, I think, or Cracklin height. And the hottest place in the ridge is apparently 428,000 degrees Cracklin height, which I don't know how you convert that to Fahrenheit or Celsius, but somebody probably has. According to Wowpedia, the fiery mountain forms a natural border where the jungle meets the earth, and shallow veins of magma flow beneath the bowl of the crater, heating the steam pools and geysers around the Ungoro crater. After the Fourth War, Zakan reported that the volcano continues to teem with elementals and wildlife. The spirits of fire told him that they have been burning here for centuries, petering out and reigniting over and over again. Zakan would like to take Queen Talanji here one day if she'd agree to keep up good relations between the Darkspear and the Zandalari. I really love this volcano. I think the fact that it's also in the Ungoro crater, which is very like, you know, prehistoric and everything, I think really makes me think volcano as well. And so for all those reasons, that's why it's number 1 on this list. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Also, if you want to check out Zygor, you can use code Crendor for 20% off now that we're partnered with them. Also, if you want to check out some more Pointless Top 10s, you can check out Pointless Top 10 Elevators, Pointless Top 10 Turtles, or a whole bunch of other ones. Okay? Okay. See ya! Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the Serpent Shrine Cavern Elevator, and this is a fun elevator. It's got a cool frog head in the middle of it. It kind of reminds me of a Slan from Warhammer, actually, but I think it's a Naga or something. I have no idea, but I think it's really cool. Everybody always talks about this elevator as like one of the original elevator bosses, right? Because if you didn't get on in time, it would go, then you'd fall and die. Also, this isn't an elevator boss video. This is just elevators that I think are cool. Some of them are elevator bosses, but I know that's like a thing. People would be like, "He didn't put the elevator boss on the." That's been your annual me talking about a metaphorical person that doesn't exist but probably does exist point of the video. But aside from that, I think this is cool. I always like raids when you walk in and right away you have to go on an elevator or whatever it might be, and then it goes like it takes you down into the raid. It feels like you're getting prepped to go do this big fight or something. I don't know. Not every raid, but I think it's cool every once in a while you get something like that. And that's what this was. So, you know, you're going all the way down into the cavern, right? And so I think that's pretty neat. So that's why this is number 10. 9. Number 9 is Telrador, and we stay in Zanger Marsh for this one. And Telrador has this elevator that comes down, goes in a little bit, and then goes out a little bit, and then goes back up. Or the opposite way, whatever. But it's always notorious for being that elevator where you're like, oh, time to get on, and then you fall through the little gap because it hasn't done its little, like, back in yet. So that's it. It's kind of a funny elevator. I don't know if they were designing this elevator and thought of that, like, everybody's gonna be falling through, or if they were just like, this would be a cool design for an elevator. Because I think that's what happens a lot of the times. They're just like, this seems like a cool thing, and then they don't realize the amount of people that are going to go through frustration from it. But it is a cool elevator, I will say that. Also, I was reading a little bit about Telrador, and it was built on an island of the Zangar Sea. This centuries-old monastery served as a retreat for Draenei anchorites and spiritualists before the exiled ones were decimated by the orcs. A small order of anchorites and vindicators maintained a number of shrines in the region. What is an anchorite? Anchorite is an honorific title the Draenei use for their priestly practitioners. Oh, look at that, double learning. Double learning, oh boy. That'd get you beat up in school. Luckily, we're not in school anymore here. And then another fun fact is Telrador does not have food vendors, and for lore-based reasons. Many of the quests relate to food gathering, and because they are close to starving, food is shared among their own people, and they would not sell it to outsiders. I never knew that. I think that's really cool. Honestly, I don't even think I realized they don't have food vendors either. So, either way, I think it's, you know, Telrador is a cool place. It's got a cool elevator, although slightly annoying times, but it's unique, and that's why it's number 9. Hey. Number 8 are the Undercity elevators, and the Undercity elevators are one of the... This is just a classic elevator, right? Like, everybody's been to the Undercity elevator. You go there, and you're like, I gotta get on the elevator, and then before you know it, the door just slams shut in your face, and you gotta stand there and wait for, like, 20 seconds like an idiot. But there's also sometimes people get caught in the doors or stuff, and people died in here, or they get in, and then the elevator's going, and they fall and die, so... There's some wacky stuff. In fact, according to Wowpedia, at one time, there was a glitch in the game so that a character running towards the opposite wall of a descending elevator would fall through the world into Stone Talon Mountains and then Alterac Mountains. This may suggest that Blizzard used a vertical system for zone placement in addition to the existing horizontal one, creating another reason for not allowing flying mounts in classic content. So that's actually interesting. I never knew that, but... The main point here is that these elevators, it felt like I was going to a NASCAR race, you know what I mean? Like you're on your mount, you're like the elevator, you try to get there, and then all of a sudden it's like, that isn't a NASCAR race, that doesn't make sense. I guess I'm more of just a race to get to the, whatever. These are cool elevators, and they were always annoying to get through on my Taran because you had to demount because it was dumb, but that's fine. And that's why they're number 8. 7? Number 7 is the Aldor Rise elevator, and it looks like a very basic elevator, right? It's just a giant structure with the elevator going up and down, and you're like, okay, what's so crazy about that? Well, the fact that you would go to this elevator, and then people would want to get down, and they couldn't, because they'd have to wait for the elevator, and they'd be like, you know what, I'm just going to jump off. Or some people would get on the elevator, and then it'd start going down, and they'd be like, I won't die if I jump off now, and then, bam. They were dead. And so you would just see a bunch of skeletons scattered across the floor of the bottom of the Aldor Rise, and it was just a death trap of an elevator, like. And it was all because people weren't patient for the most part. There was probably some people just clumsy or just kind of not paying attention, but usually it was impatient people being like, I'm not waiting 0.8 seconds for this. Also, I always like the Aldor Rise more than the Scryer Rise, and I think it's because it's partially attached already to Nagrand. So, like, if you're part of the Aldor, you would just walk out into Nagrand. Like, cool. But the Scryer, they were just, like, stuck in the corner. And it's like, okay, why would I want to be there when I could be attached to Nagrand? You got the, you know, the back exit into Nagrand. You go down a little mountain and stuff. Like, it was pretty sick. And then the Scryer over there being losers. So, I think you realize that I picked Aldor over Scryer. And that's the right choice. And that's why this is number 7. 6. Number 6 are the excavation lift elevators in the Howling Fjord. And I love these elevators because there's just so much cool aesthetic behind them, right? These big stone wolf dragon head things. Actually, is that a wolf or a dragon? I don't know. I think it's a dragon now that I'm looking at it a bit more. But I remember first coming here in Wrath of the Lich King when it launched way back when. And I remember doing the little intro area and being like, oh, this is fun. And then I remember getting to the elevator and looking up and being like, dude, that's pretty cool. I was like, whoa. I mean, it really is cool. Like, you're getting pulled all the way up a mountainside, right? And into this big animal dragon head thing. And you're getting into this little cage. Because all the other elevators up to this point were like, you stand on platform takes you up, platform takes you down. But this was like, you're getting into this cage and you're just like, what the shit? It was, I don't know, there's just something different about it, and it really had this aesthetic ambient feel to it, making you feel like you're in this different place, right? Northrend, I'm in the cold wilderness, and, you know, it's a bit more rustic and all that. I don't know. And so it's not an elevator boss. It doesn't have any crazy backstory or anything, but I think it's pretty cool, and I got some nostalgia with it, and I think some other people will too, and that's why it's number 6. 5? Number 5 is the Stormheim lift elevator, and this one is just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and it's for a Forsaken encampment. I guess they just needed to lift stuff up a mountain, which would make sense, but they didn't do a very good job of attaching it, because as you can see there, it's not even attached. So I don't know if they're using some dark magic, or like Sylvanas is doing something, pulling some strings to get this thing going. Maybe literally pulling some strings, I don't know. Because it's it's not attached. I think it's kind of funny that throughout all these years, they've just been like, hey, you know what? Just leave it. It's fine. But it's still a pretty cool little lift elevator. You know, it's not like Howling Fjord, where it's got this big dragon head and all this stuff. But I think it's a little more hidden. I think it's a little more unknown and mysterious. And that's why I moved it ahead of the Howling Fjord elevator lift. Because to me, Pointless Top 10, the reason I made this series was to kind of shine some light on the more hidden things in World of Warcraft that you don't normally see. And that's why if I'm going to do like statues or board, like whatever, a lot of times I'll show things that wouldn't normally make somebody's top 10 list, because to me it's the little unknown details that are some of the most interesting, right? Like, not everything has to be like, this is the best thing, this is the greatest thing. Like, sometimes the things that aren't that great are the greatest things. Kind of like when you eat fast food. Sometimes you know it's not great, but man, in that moment, it's pretty great. And so what I'm saying is, this elevator lift is just like fast food. And that's why it's number 5. 4. Number 4 is the Antorus elevator. And the reason everybody loves this elevator is it's one of the only elevators in the game, if not the only elevator in the game, that will squish you if you're under it. And I feel like this is another design choice that they probably did on purpose. Although maybe not, but I'm pretty sure they did, especially because when it squishes you, it turns you into like meat or something. I don't even know. It's also a very kind of, you know, it's almost like a gotcha type thing. Like, you run up and then they allow you all to gather around and you're like, where's the elevator? And then you're like, oh, and then it comes down and squishes you. So for that reason alone, I think this is one of the probably funniest elevators in World of Warcraft. It's probably one of the best elevator bosses in World of Warcraft, but I think just in general, it is a pretty cool elevator. Like, when you get to the top, you see all the planets and all the crazy holographic things. You know, it's got all the green stuff all around. The actual elevator itself has like a skull thing in the floor. It's really cool. Like, outside of the obvious stuff of it squishing you, I think this is a nice location. The elevator's pretty neat. And, I mean, there's not much else to say about it except don't stand under it. And that's why it's number 4. 3. Number 3 are the Thunderbluff elevators, and these are easily some of the most notorious elevators in World of Warcraft, because, I mean, this city is literally an elevator city. Like, there's only a couple ways to get into this city. There's flying in, and there's taking the elevator. That's it. There's no other ways. Well, you can take portals, but at least back in the day, there used to be no other way. But still, if you want to walk there, I guess you could say the only way to get up is by taking the elevator, which are, again, somehow powered by invisible strings or magic or something. But from what I was reading, the engineer Palehoof, who is the Taran engineering trainer, is in charge of keeping the city's elevators and windmills in good working order. So look at that. All the elevators and the windmills you see in Thunderbluff, Engineer Palehoof, he's the one doing it. He's the one doing the crazy magic to keep these things going up and down without any visible strings. And prior to the construction of the capital, Thunderbluff, the Taran had lived as nomads for countless generations, often under the attack by marauding bands of Centaur. With the Thunderbluff's founding, however, the proud and good-spirited race was finally granted a permanent home. I love just having this big city on mountains and being able to look out over the landscape and see the Great Plains. And I think the elevators really do just add to it, like having to go up and down the elevators every time you want to get into the city, especially back in Classic WoW, where you really did have to do that, or you'd have to just get a wyvern and fly in. And it's just, the view is amazing. And there's also the fact that you could just fall off the mountain and die. Like, you can fall off of Thunderbluff and then you're dead and you got to take the elevator back up. So that's kind of funny. But overall, I've always loved these elevators in Thunderbluff, and I had to put them on the list, and that's why they're number 3. 2. And number 2 is the Blackwing Descent elevator, and I don't know what it is, but whenever I think of an elevator boss, this is the one I think of, and I don't know why. I know there are some better elevator bosses out there. Like, I'd say the Antorus one's probably the, I think, best elevator boss, but there's something about this one that just always ties back in my mind to, like, this is the elevator boss. And I don't know if maybe because it was such an early on time in Cataclysm and I was playing the game then. I remember this is the raid that I made the Jimmy Got Ganked video outside of. It was like, Jimmy got ganked outside. So that maybe that's part of it, but I do remember going into this raid and falling victim to the elevator boss, because you clear the 2 side bosses, and then, you know, it's like anything else. People get impatient. People start messing with other people, doing like the slow fall or whatever it might be. And then before you know it, everyone's just falling. And the guild leader's like, what are you doing? What are you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. There's just something nostalgic about that. Plus, this is just a cool area for the elevator, right? There's all this lava and these dead dragons, and it's like this underground city. It's honestly really cool. I love this raid. Like, Cataclysm, for as much as I'll bash it, it's got some cool stuff in it, right? I think that's how it is with a lot of these expansions. Even if I didn't have fun in that expansion, a lot of the art and the music and the raids, like a whole bunch of stuff, is just really cool. And so that's another reason I love doing these pointless top 10s, is to go back to those places where I'm like, man, that place sucked. And then I look around, I'm like, yo, this place is actually pretty sick, especially now that I don't have to do it. And so that's why it's number 2. 1. And number 1 is the Great Lift in the Thousand Needles, and specifically Classic WoW, because new Thousand Needles, it's not the same, man. Like, old Thousand Needles, going onto that lift, dropping down into this big, almost like Looney Tunes-esque area, like the Salt Flats. You know, you had Shimmering Flats over there. You had all these crazy animals running around, and Centaur. Like, it was just a wild experience. And you look up and you're just surrounded by all these big rocky needles, and everything was set up by the Great Lift. You know, you go over here and you get on there and you just drop down, and it kind of reminds me of everything I've been talking about with the raids, right? You get on an elevator and you go down into the Serpent Shrine Cavern, or you, like, you know, go down into wherever you're going. And so this is kind of a similar thing where you submerge yourself into this zone and you look up and you're like, damn, this is crazy. And I've always loved that about Thousand Needles and the Great Lift. And, you know, there's a reason it's called the Great Lift. Like, this is one of the greatest lifts in World of Warcraft. And whenever I think of elevators, I think this is the most notorious elevator that I think of. Like, I always think of going here and dropping down in the Thousand Needles, and the amount of people that have fallen off here, or people fighting on here and then jump off or get killed and fall off. It's great. I've always loved it. It's a beautiful area. you know, great sunsets, great sky, and I really do love the Great Lift and Thousand Needles, and I hope that if they do redo the old world, that they bring back the old Thousand Needles that isn't flooded. And then they could give us a brand new Great Lift, the Great Lift 2.0, and that'd be pretty cool. But for now, this is number 1. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube lingo. Also, if you want to check out some other Pointless Top 10s, we had Pointless Top 10 houses in the middle of nowhere last week. We also had Pointless Top 10 forges the other week. You can check that one out as well. Okay? Okay. See ya! Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things, where we fly by this pointless statue in Booty Bay, because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is this house in the Stone Talon Mountains, and it's about as far northwest as you can go in the Stone Talon Mountains. It's a little bit west and north of Stone Talon Peak, more west than north, and it's just randomly out there in the open. This is a very random place for a house. It's this random troll hut, and there's just nothing else around. There's a cauldron, there's some animals hopping around, there's some trees, and that's really it. It looks like it's an abandoned hut, although the cauldron's still bubbling, so I don't know if they left the cauldron on. It's like leaving your oven on or something. Dude's gonna come back like, I left the cauldron on, not again. But realistically, this is probably where they were going to add some sort of content to the game in Stone Talon Mountains, and then they just never got to it, or it just got abandoned, and they're like, all right, whatever, just leave it there. And now it's just some random troll hut in the middle of nowhere. And I actually never knew this thing existed until this video, and maybe that's how you are too. But now, you know. And that's number 10. 9. Number 9 is a home in the Barrens above the Wailing Caverns, and this actually used to be a quest hub. I don't believe it is anymore, but Fala Sagewind is the person that lives here, and she is a Tauren just chilling up in the mountains above the Wailing Caverns, having a great view. You could look out and see everything from up here. But this used to be the quest for the Glowing Shard, and I believe this was a Horde-only quest, so Alliance people are probably like, and then Horde people are like, dude, I remember that. And fun fact, there's actually a Hunter Sagewind in Thunderbluff, so it is very likely that Fala Sagewind and Hunter Sagewind are related in some way, so that's pretty cool. But overall, this was one of those houses that always stood out to me as one of the houses in the middle of nowhere, because I remember way back in the day trying to find this place, and I was like, where am I supposed to take this? And then you realize, like, wow, you have to like literally climb a mountain, and you get to the top of it, and then there's just some little Tauren house. And you're like, oh wow, and you get a nice view over the entire landscape, and you're like, dude, this is amazing. And that's why I really love that quest, is they made you go up a mountain, and then you're annoyed, you're like, oh, this sucks, this is dumb, why do I have to do this? Then you get to the top, and you just get that scenic view, and you're like, dude, nice. And then someone says a Chuck Norris joke and ruins the immersion because it's 2005. So that's why this is number 9. 8. Number 8 is the Hayward Fishery, and this one's got some interesting lore in it, so let me read you a bit here from Wowpedia. Hayward Fishery was formerly a small single island prior to the Cataclysm. It is now a tiny archipelago off the coast of southwestern Gilneas, which houses an abandoned fishing business that was run by the Hayward brothers, Sebastian, Ron, Trent, Walt, and Tim Hayward. The brothers were trying to repair one of their ships with the help of young Gilnean adventurers so they can escape, while at the same time being attacked by forsaken castaways. Oddly enough, despite the rest of the Duskhaven area having been sunken by the Cataclysm, the fishery is all and well, having not even been touched. Ironically, the Haywards could have stood a chance at remaining at their home rather than evacuating like the others. So this is one of those weird stories where if they would have just stayed where they were, they would have been fine, you know what I mean? But obviously hindsight's 2020. They go off, and they're probably dead now, but who knows? There's also a theory that Deathstalker Hayward is related to them, and he's a Forsaken Deathstalker located in New Agamond in the Howling Fjord. But overall, as an abandoned house, this place is also pretty cool, right? There's a bunch of fishing gear all over. There's fishing lures, fishing poles, fishing boats. It just has a cool aesthetic to it, and you know how much I love fishing, so that also played into it, but I just think this is a cool place. It's got a cool history, and that's why it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is Newman's Landing. I actually stumbled across this place when I was doing my level 1 hardcore run across the world challenge, which I'll put a link to up above, but it's a small area found on the western coast of Dunmorrow, just west of Coldridge Valley. It holds a dilapidated human building and a dock. At the building, there is alcohol, several boxes of grain, some bone piles, and a sign that says Newman's Landing. In patch 3.02, the goblin named High Admiral Shelley Jorrick was added to the dock, along with 2 Booty Bay bruisers, but they were removed in Legion. Now, there's actually a lot of weird theories behind Newman's Landing, so there's a few weird things happening. One is trying to fish at Newman's Landing used to give the air, there are no fish here, but after patch 3.09, it is possible to fish there. Originally, dying in Newman's Landing, or just north of it, would have the players reappear in Menethil Harbor. Dying south of it would cause one to respawn in Sentinel Hill in Westfall. And originally, shift-clicking the name of a character standing in Newman's Landing would show them in the location unknown. In the guild roster, the location field would be a blank space. Then, after researching a bit more, I found somebody on Reddit saying before your character is teleported to the new character starting zone, that's where the characters spawn. Back when people's internet was slower, you could see bodies spawn there for a fraction of a second before being teleported whenever someone made a new character. Thus, it was New Man's Landing, because it's somewhere where new men were spawning. But then someone else was like, no, that's a rumor. Here's a quote from Sam Lantinga, who was a original game engineer on World of Warcraft, and they said, I think that might have been the 0 point on that continent. We had a bug where if a player died when crossing a zone boundary between physical servers, that they would be loaded with a 0 position. We would quickly fix them up, but they would already be in the world at that point, and well, ghosts abound. So whatever the case may be, this house is still a pretty cool house in the middle of nowhere, and it has a ton of history, a bunch of theories and rumors, and a whole bunch of stuff, and that's why it's number 7. 6. Number 6 is this dwarf house slash farm on the eastern coast of the Arathi Highlands. This used to be a place where there was absolutely nothing. There was just a dwarf, maybe 2 dwarves, just some animals, and no quests or anything. It was just here. And so some people think it was just here for roleplay reasons, or it was supposed to be a thing and it never happened, but either way, it's just a cool little place. But now, they've actually added Grimmy, and Grimmy is the quest NPC for the Waste of Time cosmetic. It's just a belt cosmetic, and it's a clock, because you've wasted your time. There's like 40-something things you have to do. It really is a waste of time, but it is weird going to this place after being like, it's this calm, relaxing dwarf farm in the middle of nowhere. And now it's just this gnome skeleton that's like, hoo-hoo, greetings. In fact, he has a few quotes. He says, oh my, visitors, and I haven't a thing to wear. And I would treat you to a smile and a toast, but alas, I have neither skin nor ale. And don't hesitate to make yourselves at home. So Grimmy's a little weird. And he was actually added in Battle for Azeroth, so this isn't that old of an addition to the game. But I mean, I'm a sucker for Arathi Highlands. I always loved Arathi Highlands, one of my favorite zones. And so having a house in the middle of nowhere in one of my favorite zones, I was like, this one's got to be on the list, especially now with this weird-ass gnome skeleton. And so that's why it's number 6. 5. Number 5 is this gnome house in the ruined reaches of Azshara, kind of near Durothar. And this one's kind of a crazy one, because Bingham Gadget Spring is here, and there's a quest that Hobart Grapplehammer sends you on to go deal with Bingham and his fellow gnomes that are a thorn in the side of the local goblins. So you go there, he sends explosive sheep at you, and all the gnomes try to fight you. It's a great time. But there's actually some crazy Gadget Spring lore. So, there used to be his mother and father in this building, Bleemo Gadget Spring and Juby Gadget Spring. And if you go into this house that Bingham Gadget Spring's in now, you'll find a purchase order receipt for a giant-sized laxative that was ordered to retrieve his father, Bleemo. So the receipt says, Mrs. Gadget Spring, the industrial-strength laxative agent you requested is enclosed. My condolences on the fate of Mr. Bleemo Gadget Spring. I don't know why you didn't order a vomit-inducing agent. Good luck on your endeavors. So Juby, after Bleemo was eaten by a cliffwalker, decided to order a super laxative, give it to the cliffwalker, and hope the cliffwalker just popped him out. But that never happened. He was dead. We've never seen him again, and that cliffwalker probably had a terrible time. And so for all these wacky stories and all this stuff, this is number 5. 4. Number 4 is a house in Stormheim, west of the Agrimar's Vault, and it is owned by Tigrid the Charmer, that is the enchantress here, and you would have to go here for enchanting stuff back in Legion, but she probably doesn't get that much business anymore, and so it's just a random Stormheim house in the middle of nowhere. But this is a really cool house, which is why I put it so high up on the list. It's got really nice aesthetic. There's candles, there's books laying around, there's a fireplace, and just a bunch of little knickknacks here and there, and just there's just a lot of cool things all around, which is, you know, you would expect that from somebody that's really into enchanting and all that, right? You would have a bunch of magical stuff laying around, but it's just, for being this old rundown place in the mountains, for being a house in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, it's got a very cozy aesthetic to it. And so it doesn't have crazy lore like some of the other houses, but it's a very nice location. There's rams and birds all over. There's even a bird that like sits on top of the entrance to the house. It's very nice. It's charming. It's quaint. And because of that, I put it at number 4. Number 3 is a cozy Tauren house up in the mountains of Mulgore and Feralus, and I guess a little bit of Thousand Needles. It's more that you can see Thousand Needles from here, not so much that it's in it, but it's just something that I never knew was in the game, and it's just a great cozy aesthetic place. Like, you got the Tauren house, you got the big totem pole, you got a canoe, you have some wind chimes like up in the tree, and it looks like there's a dead Kodo. I don't know if maybe he came up here and there's a Kodo and he like killed it, because there's arrows in the Kodo, so I mean, something happened there, and now he's like decorating the Kodo. Like, I have no idea, but this dude was determined, right? This guy was like, I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna make my getaway house to escape from reality, go up into the mountains. He's probably gonna smoke that Tauren weed that they make you smoke as part of that quest chain to get heritage armor. Just look out over the landscape and be like, man, life's good. And now we have no idea who lives here or where this Tauren is or anything. It's just a random abandoned house up in the mountains, but it's fantastic. I love this place. I'm glad I found it because I never knew it existed. And it's one of those places that has no lore, and yet so much lore. Damn. That's why it's number 3. Number 2 are the houses in the Caverns of Time, and ever since I saw these houses in this path years ago, I knew I wanted to do something with them, right? I was like, these are just so cool, and they can be glanced over pretty easily, because you're walking through the tunnels to get to the Caverns of Time, you're just like, there's some stuff all around, whatever, but I think it's so cool that you see these different types of houses just merged into the wall, or houses that you can actually walk into, and it's almost like you're going through this different time dimension. Like, you're walking through a portal into a different time. And then you look up into the sky and you see another house, but with like floating rocks and stars in the background. It's just, it really makes you feel like you're walking through time. And that's what I enjoy most about these houses. Like, they may not be, you know, they may not be the coolest houses, they may not be the most aesthetic houses, but it's a variety of houses just scattered throughout the Caverns of Time entrance and making you feel like you really are walking through time. And for those reasons, I decided to put them at number 2. And number 1 are the underwater gnome houses in Tanaris. And these actually have a crazy history where they were in the game way back in Alpha, and then they were moved down along the coast for the Encourage opening quest. And then after that, they kind of were just useless, and they were just sitting under the water after Cataclysm. And then as of Legion, they made these a part of the engineering quest chain. So they've changed what they are throughout history, but I think these really represent why it's so much fun to find random stuff out in the middle of nowhere, right? Like these random houses, and it's because, you know, they've had their purposes changed over time. But the main thing is people find these and they think they found some sort of hidden treasure. And in a way they have. And I think it's really cool to explore a world, and then when you find something that you think nobody else has found, or even if you find something someone else has found, but you can figure out a different meaning for it, or you know something about it, it really just adds to the history and the fun and the richness of the world. That may sound like a bunch of fluff words, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And so that's why these are number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want some more Pointless Top 10s, you can check out last week's, which was Pointless Top 10 Turtles, and before that we had Pointless Top 10 Dungeon Entrances, so go check those out. Okay? Okay. See ya! Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 are the sparkle shelled tortoises in the Shimmering Flats before it got flooded. And I feel like we have to clarify this right away in this video. So, tortoises are turtles, but not all turtles are tortoises, according to the Nashville Zoo. That's not just me saying that. And apparently, tortoises have more round and dome shells, where turtles have thinner, more water dynamic shells. Tortoises spend most of their time on land. Tortoises have more club-like forelegs, and turtles will have more flipper-like legs and web feet to make it easier to cruise through the water. So, there you go. All tortoises are turtles, but not the other way around. Because I already knew some guys would be like, Crendor is a tortoise? Okay, calm down. But either way, these are great turtle tortoises. I love the Shimmering Flats tortoises. I used to farm them back in the day trying to make gold. And when I say back in the day, I mean like 20 years ago. And I was like in high school and I was like, this will be a great way to make money. And it turns out it was not. But I still have nostalgia of it. And I really enjoyed being in the Shimmering Flats. It's one of those zones where you either hate it or love it. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's boring. There's nothing there. Maybe that's why I love it. Just like this video series. It's boring. There's nothing there, but is there something there? Probably not. That's number 10. 9. Number 9 is Kresh, and Kresh is a big turtle that wanders up and down the river in the Wailing Caverns. He's an optional boss. You don't have to kill him, but a lot of people would kill him for his shell, or they'd want to get him as a pet, so they wouldn't kill him, but they'd tame him. I always thought Kresh was really cool. I always remember coming into the Wailing Caverns and being like, oh, we got to kill Kresh. I got to get the shield or whatever. But I always wondered, like, why is he here, right? Well, I was like, oh, he's just a turtle in the Wailing Caverns, but like, what made him go crazy? And then I read this on Wowpedia, and it kind of blew my mind. So it says, this giant turtle wanders the underground caves, his resilient mind unaffected by Gnarlex's relentless nightmares. Don't be fooled by his happy disposition. Kresh has thwarted many adventurers who long steal his massive shell. So he's actually just not affected by the nightmares happening in the Wailing Caverns. Like I just mentioned in one of the other Pointless Top 10s, how all the night elf druids got corrupted. That's why you got to fight them, and all the stuff in here's corrupted. And then he's just fine. He's just walking around. He's like, these people are trying to kill me. I got to fight back. Like, that's it. So like, why are we not researching this? Like, for some reason, this turtle is just immune to the dark energies of the nightmare. Like, what? And everyone's like, I don't know. I tried looking more into it, and nobody knows anything. So I'm like, am I crazy? Like, you would think somebody in charge in World of Warcraft, not like Blizzard, but like somebody like Thrall or like one of these people, be like, hey, you know what? Isn't it kind of crazy that turtle's unaffected by the nightmare? Maybe we should like research it a bit, you know? They're just like, nah, I don't think so. So you know what? Just for Thresh's resiliency to evil, he's number 9. 8. Number 8 are the Snapjaw turtles in Hillsborough Foothills, and I think these are one of the most notorious questing turtles. I think it's an early level range of like in the 20s, 30s. Most people on Alliance and Horde run into these turtles, and they need to get them for the turtle meat, and I think because of that, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to kill these, and they're kind of tanky, and it takes a while to get the turtle meat, but you know, most people have run into these Snapjaw turtles, and I think because of that, they are one of the most notorious turtles in World of Warcraft, but they are not, you know, they're not like a super cool turtle. They're not anything crazy, but, you know, it's a Snapjaw turtle, right? And everybody knows about them, and I feel like because of that, they're number 8. 7. Number 7 is Krusty Bob, and Krusty Bob is just a small turtle that runs around a camp in the Azuremist Isle. And there's really nothing more to it. He's just he's a little guy. He runs around, and he's pretty fast for a turtle, to be honest. Like, look how fast he's running. You expect to see a little turtle, like, going doop, 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 but no, he's zipping around, man. There's really no other information on him. I expected there to be something, but part of me thought this might be a Simpsons reference to, like, Krusty the Clown and Sideshow Bob. So That would be my best guess. Maybe somebody was like, hey, let's put a little Simpson reference in there, but there's no official, like, this is a reference type of thing, right? So, I mean, overall, even if he's not a reference, he's just a fun little turtle guy. And I believe you can get a turtle similar to him in Children's Week. That's what I was finding when I was researching this. So if you want your own Krusty Bob, you can go get one in Children's Week, which I guess was pretty recently if you're watching this when this came out, but maybe you're watching it later. I don't know. Overall, Krusty Bob, great turtle, very fast. Number 7. 6. Number 6 is Dubenko, and Dubenko is a turtle at the Dark Moon Fair. He looks a little bit like Krusty Bob, but actually I think he looks a little more crusty. I think he should be Krusty Bob, and Krusty Bob should be Dubenko, but that's besides the point. And he walks around with a big stick on his shell. I don't know how he got that stick on his shell. I don't know if they just glued it on or what they did. But yeah, he walks around and you try to throw rings on him, and that's one of the Dark Moon Fair dailies. And I don't know if this is a ethical business practice. I mean, this is the Dark Moon Fair, right? But the animal activists or whatever in World of Warcraft, the DETA, the Druids for the Ethical and Humane Treatment of Animals, I don't know if they would like this very much, but, you know, maybe he's having a good time. Maybe he enjoys people missing their ring toss things. He enjoys yelling at you. I think it would actually be more fitting if he yelled at you, right? Every time you miss, he's like, you idiot. Come on, I bet you can't get a ring on here. In fact, that would probably be more like Krusty Bob. I think, plus, you know, carnivals, like the Simpson reference, like Krusty Bob, right? I really think Dubenko and Krusty Bob should change names. I think it'd be very fitting. But either way, he's number 6. 5. Number 5 is Tortola, and Tortola is a turtle demigod, and according to Hamuel Rune Totem, he is one of the oldest ancients, having been alive since the time of the Titans. Due to that, he speaks in an old language that has been long forgotten, which proves incomprehensible to players. And although Tortola wasn't apparently seriously injured, he needed time to recover from the war, and then when he was sleeping, the shattering itself is what woke him up, and so the Twilight's hammer came to capture him, and he wasn't ready, and then they were able to create the Dark Ancient Nemesis, replacing Tortola. And that's why we have Nemesis here, who's kind of like the crazy Bowser version of Tortola, which still looks pretty sick, which is why I had to include this as well. And after players free him and his unborn children, he is prepared to bring down his wrath and that of his children alongside the Guardians of Hyjal. Tortola later assisted adventurers in closing a portal of the Twilight's Hammer to Firelands and a burning Night Elf town in Mount Hyjal. So this turtle's had some insane backstory, and he's probably one of the most powerful turtles in World of Warcraft, and because of that, he's number 5. 4. Number 4 is Scroll Sage Nola and the turtles making it to the water. I had to include the turtles making it to the water, like 100%. How could you not have a turtle list without those turtles? And Scroll Sage Nola is the one who says the quote. This is her world quest, and she is a Tortolan located in Eventide Delta in Stormsong Valley and Little Tortola in Dazara Lore, as well as various other areas of Kulturas and Zandalar. But this is one of the most famous and well-known quests in World of Warcraft. It just became a meme. It actually has still been my sub sound over on Twitch. And it's just, a turtle made it to the water. And then you help the turtles make it to the water as the crazy seagulls or birds or whatever try to dive bomb them and pick them up and eat them or something. So, it's always a good feeling when you knock a few birds down and the turtles make it to the water. And because of how popular this quest is and how popular this has become in just World of Warcraft lore in general, I had to put it on the list. So, number 4 has made it to the pointless top 10 list. Sorry, that was, I don't know what I was thinking. That's number 4. 3. Number 3 is Tortos, and Tortos is the 4th boss encounter in the Throne of Thunder, and he's within the caverns, as you can see. And according to Wowpedia, over the millennia, small amounts of Mogu flesh-shaping magic seeped into the caverns below the Thunder King's citadel. The dark energies warped one of the chamber's native dragon turtles, melding it into the surrounding crystalline walls. Known as Tortos, this amalgamation of flesh and stone has since feasted on the cave's rich mineral deposits and grown to a colossal size. So, I mean, just knowing that alone, like, this is just some random dragon turtle that happened to have these crazy, like, X-Men type radiation situations occur, and now he's just this giant turtle boss living under the caverns, or in the caverns below the Thunder King Citadel. Like, I think that's just awesome. Like, to me, this is one of the most underrated turtles in World of Warcraft. Like, this dude he's awesome. I think these are some of my favorite design characters or bosses in World of Warcraft. You know, you have all these different backstories and all this stuff, and this is just like, yeah, this turtle had some crazy shit happen, and now he's a giant turtle in the wall. And so I had to put him on the list, and I was like, I gotta put him high up on the list. He's too cool for this, so he's number 3. Number 2 is Lonely Guju, and Lonely Guju is a ghostly flying turtle found on the northeastern shores of the Kunlai Summit, and he responds to various emotes such as /love, /hug, /wave, etc. And Lonely Guju is actually a reference to Lonesome George, who was a 100-year-old tortoise that was one of the rarest creatures in the world and served as an important symbol for the conservation efforts in the Galapagos Islands and throughout the world. So first off, a flying ghost turtle is pretty cool, so that alone made me want to put this on the list. But then, reading about the references to Lonesome George and how it's just, you know, it's sad. He was one of the last rare creatures of his kind, and then he died in 2012, and they made this reference to him, and then you can wave to him, and he follows you around. And then he just dies. Like, he's already a ghost, then he dies again. It's even more sad. And so this had to go way up on the list. And I almost put it at number 1, but I was like, you know what? Number 2 is good for him. It rhymes. Lonely Guju at number 2. And rest in peace, Lonesome George. And rest in peace, Lonely Guju. 1. And number 1 is Shenzin Su. And Shenzin Su is a great turtle that roams Azeroth's oceans, which some Pandaren named the Wandering Isle, on which they explore the world outside Pandaria. He is a fully sentient being, and he's quite aware of the Pandaren that have been living on his back for generations. Another crazy thing I read is that Shenzin Su is the largest animal in Azeroth, possibly the largest animal known to exist so far. And so, according to Wowpedia, centuries ago, a sea turtle hatched at Turtle Beach in the Krasarong Wilds in the land of Pandaria. This turtle presumably lived a normal everyday life, reaching adulthood and becoming a creature of noteworthy size. One fateful day 800 years before the Dark Portal, it met and was befriended by a Pandaren named Lu Lang, which we actually talk about a bit in Pointless Top 10 Statues, link above. And if you look at the pet journal entry of the Emerald Turtle, it says, "It is difficult to believe that Shenzin Su began life as a tiny emerald turtle." While the Wanderers Festival hatchling says, legend has it that the Sea Dragon Turtle, just like this one, grew up and became Shenzin Su. So we already had that Cavern Turtle that was just a normal turtle and grew up into this crazy cavern boss. And now we have Shenzin Su, who was also just some small normal turtle and then became an entire island that people live on. Like, it's crazy. And so, because of that, he's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, animal in all of Azeroth. He's easily the biggest turtle, and he's just a really cool looking turtle overall. And that's why he's number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube lingo. Also, if you want to check out some other Pointless Top 10s and you need more of them, Pointless Top 10 Forges just happened. You could check that one out right there. Or, if you'd rather check out Pointless Top 10 Dungeon Entrances, you could check that one out right there. Okay? Okay. See ya. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the forge at the blacksmith at the Arathi Basin, and I think before we even get into all this, we need to define what is a forge, because when I was doing this list, I was looking at some furnaces, and I was like, well, is a furnace really a forge? And it's not. Typically, a furnace is a big oven that has a closed door, while a forge is generally used for metal work, and it's an open fire source where you can place your metal into it and heat it to a temperature and forge it into shape. So you can't really do that with a furnace. So if you look in the background there, that is a furnace in the Arathi Basin. But if you have that big fireplace in there, then that is actually a forge. You know, I actually learned that. I didn't know the difference between either one. And it took a little bit of Googling for me to actually find that. But I love the Arathi Basin blacksmith. And I was like, yo, this would be a cool forge to have. And it's not even so much the forge itself that I think is cool, but the actual entire blacksmithing area more so than anything, right? I've always loved the Arathi Basin blacksmith. I think they did an awesome job updating it in, I think it's got updated in BFA. And I don't know, it's a very aesthetically pleasing area to be in, right? And so, for that reason alone, I had to put it at number 10. 9. Number 9 is the Obliterum Forge, and this is a forge built by the Demon Hunters in Dalaran, which can destroy epic items in order to gain Obliterum Ash, which could then be combined in order to create Obliterum. But I don't really care about that. This is mainly because the forge actually looks really sick. It's got these big demon horns, and you might look at it and be like, Crendor, that looks more like a furnace, but the front of it does open up, so I guess that would allow you to forge your weapons and stuff, but as of patch 9.1, it can no longer be used, so it actually doesn't open up anymore. However, this also is like a forge that destroys epic items, so you're not really forging items in this, but I guess you're maybe forging epic items into... But no, you're burning them into ash. Listen, I don't even think Blizzard knows what a forge is. Maybe nobody knows what a forge is at this point, but... it's called the Obliterum Forge. So you know what? It looks cool. It's got the crazy green glowing eyes and fire in its mouth, or fire. I don't know what it is, but it looks pretty neat. I don't know if it's actually a forge, so that's why it's number 9. Hey! Number 8 is the Rune Forge, and the Rune Forge, I think, is our first real forge that we found. Or put on this list, I guess. I mean, I've found all these already. I don't know why I said that, but... a Rune Forge, according to Wikipedia, is a special type of forge used by Death Knights to emblazon their weapon with runes. A Rune Forge is required to modify any runes already in your weapon done via rune forging. So, there it is. You literally can forge your weapons with these Rune Forges, and they fit the bill, right? They got the open fire where you can stick the sword in, and that's it. And honestly, they're really cool. You know, these are from Wrath of the Lich King, obviously, and... I don't want to judge them based on their graphical style because, you know, it's an anvil inside of a forge-looking thing that's a skull, you know? And, I mean, for the time, it was pretty cool, but nowadays it would be a lot different, probably better graphics, better flames, better everything, but, you know, there was still something nostalgic about it. I think everybody remembers making a Death Knight, going to this Rune Forge, forging your weapon, and being like, yo, I can put, like, runes in this and stuff. Like, it was just fun. I think when you think of forges in World of Warcraft, this is definitely one of the forges that stands out, right? I mean, they have rune forging in Hearthstone, rune forges in Naxxramas, there's updated rune forges. Like, this was a staple of forging in World of Warcraft, and that's why it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is the Forge in Orgrimmar, and this one's actually really cool and unique because the forge is not a flame you put the fire into, it's just the lava surrounding the entire room. So if you want to forge some weapon, you just dip it into the lava around the room, and it's really cool because then they got the water right there, right? So you put it in the fire and then put it in the water, and it's like psh, like they do in all the shows and movies or whatever it might be, but or real life, I guess, when they're forging stuff. But I just love this one because it's unique, because whenever you think of a forge, you think of, like we just saw, the Rune Forge, like a container with a flame inside, and you put the sword or whatever it is into that flame, and that's it. But this is just like, the orcs have gone crazy, man. Like, they're like, what if the floor was a forge? And they're like, yo, right on, man. Like, they might have been listening to the trolls a little too much. Like, yo, what if, like, the forge was in the floor? And they're just like, yeah. This guy smoking a bunch of weed is right. What if the forge was in the floor? And then here we are. And it's awesome. So I really wanted to put this one on the list because of how unique it is. But I also wanted to use this moment to give a shout out to the Stormwind Forge, which was the old Orgrimmar Forge, and just the forge of cities, right? Anywhere you went that needed a forge, this was the forge that was there. Just this little tiny classic WoW forge, and I was going to put this on the list, but something cooler showed up, and I was like, well, I got to put this on, so I wanted to give it an honorable mention anyway. Actually, there's multiple forges here. There's this other old forge as well, so I guess shout out to the old school forges for being basic, but necessary. And I figured this would be a good spot to put them in, since they're part of, like, a city, and it's Orgrimmar, Stormwind, you get it. So that's why these are number 7. Sucks. Number 6 are the Soulsteel Forges, and I know what you're thinking. Shadowlands, the Maw. Somebody's getting post-traumatic stress just from looking at these, but that's besides the point. We're looking at the art, the aesthetic of this forge, and it's awesome. I think if rune forges were designed today, they would look a lot like this, right? Like, they have the rune forges on the side. They have like swords for teeth. Like, come on, they got the glowing eyes, the flame is gigantic in there. Like, these are really cool forges. You know, these are the forges you'd go to do the daily ingot loot quest, so that's right. But you know what, going back to the maw when you don't have to do anything is a lot more fun. Let me just say that, all right? And you can kind of just appreciate more of the stuff there for its artistic quality. And this is one of the things that I was like, yo, like back when I had to do these dailies and then I stopped doing them because I didn't want to do them anymore, this place sucked. But when you just go there to appreciate what somebody designed and put into the game and you don't have to really do anything with it, it's fantastic. And so for that reason alone, these Soulsteel forges are number 6. 5. Number 5 is the Forge of Souls, and I knew I had to put the Forge of Souls on the list because this is an actual dungeon that is a forge. So I was like, well, this is going on the list because not only that, but it's also pretty cool looking. I mean, like, for the time of Wrath of the Lich King, it almost looks like it could be out of Shadowlands, you know what I mean? Because that's how good this place looks. But I was thinking, well, what do they do with the Forge of Souls? Are they making soul weapons or something? So I don't know, but I was reading more into it. Apparently, the name for this instance might be inspired by the Forge of Souls of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, which is a workshop which crafts the unholy weapons of demons, which I think would make a lot of sense because a lot of World of Warcraft is just inspired from Warhammer. In fact, a lot of Blizzard products are just inspired from Warhammer. And according to Wowpedia, the Forge of Souls is a massive production facility that contains soul grinders. And I was like, okay, well, are these soul grinders grinding up souls and then making these soul weapons or something? But all the lore that I read doesn't really talk about what it does. But in Shadowlands, it would be revealed that the Forge of Souls' true purpose was to extract the world soul of Azeroth through Icecrown and Torghast into the sepulture of the First Ones, where the Zolval, the jailer, intended to use it for the power, the machine of origination to rewrite reality. But that doesn't really make sense to me, because forges are for forging weapons, right? Or for forging, I don't know, something. So what's he forging? Is he forging the world soul? I don't even know if you can forge a world soul. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna say that Arthas made this place to forge some cool undead weapons for his army from souls. That sounds cool. I think the dungeon's cool. This forge is awesome. It's number 5. 4! Number 4 is the Colossal Forge, and this is actually the forge that I forgot about and that I had to replace something on the list with because I thought it was so cool. So I was trying to complete my Traveler's Log. I had to kill 10 more raid bosses. I was like, you know what? Let's just go to Ulduar. So I go to Ulduar, and I was like, dude, the Colossal Forge. How could I forget about this place? Like, it is this massive, some might even say, Colossal Forge. And Ignis, the Furnace Master, is guarding it. And he is a giant fire construct that was created by Loken. And after his defeat in Ulduar, the Titan Keepers brought him back, and he is now working again in Ulduar's furnace. But the main point here is that this forge is awesome, right? It's just giant fire going on in the background. There's these big snake golden, I don't know if they're snakes or eagles or something. They're an animal head, and it's got the molten lava just pouring out. And, you know, Ignis himself, like, has a built-in forge. He's got, like, a cup of lava around him, so he can just, like, forge on the go. Like, this guy is awesome. And I'm glad I stumbled across this forge when I was doing my mount farming / Traveler's Log, because I would have been upset if I would have found this later on and been like, are you kidding me? This is a Colossal Forge I didn't put on the forge list. But then it would have made it into the pointless top 10 things I forgot to put in the pointless top 10s list, which, you know, that'll happen eventually. And that's number 4. 3! And number 3 is the Thunder Forge. And I picked the Thunder Forge here because I love the astral lightning look that it's got going on. So the Thunder Forge is found on the Isle of Thunder, and it was built atop of ancient Titan machinery and powered by the Fist of Ra-Den and the High Keeper's Ward for thousands of years until some other stuff happened. But pretty much, it's a really cool old Titan Forge. I love the look of it. It's got that Pandaria aesthetic, which is also really fun. I think it's just really cool to look at and be in and walk around. However, a lot of people did not like the quest that was related to this back in the day. Pretty much you had to help Rathian, and he was walking around trying to work this thing, and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you gotta like fight off stuff, and a lot of people died all the time. So A lot of people don't like this place, but I think if you go back now and you just forget about that quest ever happening, it's a pretty nice forge. It's got the various anvils, it's got the lightning shooting down from the giant ball up top, it's got the buckets of lava, it's got pretty much everything you'd expect to find at a forge, so there's really not much else for me to say. I couldn't find that much more on it, but that's why it's number 3. 2! And number 2 is the Great Forge of Ironforge, and I feel like you had to know Ironforge was going to be on the list in some way, but the Great Forge, according to Wowpedia, is the heart and namesake of the dwarf capital of Ironforge. It was the first part of the city to be built by the early dwarves who first settled under Ironforge Mountain. The rest of the city grew around it and consequently named Ironforge in its honor. The Great Forge never shuts down. It's a loud, hot, and cheerful place serving not only as the physical center of the city, but also the central part of city life. Most citizens regularly pass through the forge, while visitors come to admire what is happening there. At the center of the Great Forge is the Great Anvil, where most of the best dwarven blacksmithing trainers can be found. Ringed around the Great Forge are several foundries pouring molten slag and a great deal of shops and guild offices, including trainers, etc. Another couple cool facts about it is that 2 bells were created here as a token of friendship, and the dwarves sent one to Lordaeron and the other to Stormwind City. It was also here upon the Great Anvil itself that the legendary blade Ashbringer was forged by King Magni Bronzebeard. So I'd say this is a pretty notable and historic place in World of Warcraft, and that would make it one of the most notable and historic forges in World of Warcraft, and that's why it's number 2. 1. And number 1 is the forge in Utgard Keep. Now, we've seen some forges today, right? We've seen a decent amount of forges, but look at this thing. This is like a backfired forge. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to forge your weapons in this thing, but it is going insane. And they're just kind of chilling. Like, yeah, you know, Forge is just doing its thing. It's just shooting out massive flames, and we're just working by it. You know how it is. And, you know, when you actually do the dungeon, you have to kill them, and then the flames go away. But prior to that, this thing's just, it's going crazy. Like, this is this is the most insane, intense forge I think I've seen in World of Warcraft. And it's also just a really cool room. It's got the big water troughs. It's got the anvils that have wolf heads on them. It's got the air pumpers. I don't know what they're called, but they're, you know, blowing air into the forge. It's just an awesome forge, and I had to put it at the top, and I was like, you know what? This deserves to be number 1. And that's why it's number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Also, share it with your friends, your family, your guildmates, your dog. I don't know, or don't. I'm not your boss. Also, we got more Pointless Top 10s you can check out. Dungeon entrances, boars, skeletons, statues. Got a whole bunch of them. I'll put some up on the screen. Okay? Okay. See ya. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the dungeon entrance for the Throne of Tides and the scrapped Abyssal Maw dungeon. And it's pretty cool because, you know, you're swimming around and you look down and you see this big whirlpool in the ground with all this glowing blue energy or whatever it is kind of radiating from it. And you got the cracks in the ground, and it's just like, you know, you see that and your initial thought is like, dude, can I swim into that? At least that was my initial thought. Some people are probably like, oh, I gotta stay away from that. I might get killed in there. But you're just like, dude, what happens if I swim into there, right? So everybody's got to have that thought, right? But it is really cool, you know, once you swim into it, it's like a big Mario pipe. It like warps you down and you're like, bloop, bloop, bloop. And then you swirl around and you end up in this big beach room. And it's actually pretty sick, you know, some really cool rocks and plants and stuff in there. And you got some waterfalls happening, you know, really cool pillars. They almost look like mushrooms, but I don't think they're mushrooms. They're like coral. I guess that would actually make a lot more sense. It's coral, not under... You know what? Underwater mushrooms are essentially just, you know, coral, right? Scientists out there? Anyway, it's nice to go and give Vajir some credit, because there is a lot of cool art and a lot of cool stuff in this zone. And, you know, it gets a lot of hate, from myself included, right? Because I've always been like, oh, I hate Vajir and all that stuff, but it's got some cool stuff. And that's why I wanted to put this dungeon entrance at number 10. 9. Number 9 is the Vault of the Wardens. And if you don't know, the Vault of the Wardens was the max security facility to hold all the great threats to the world, including Illidan Stormrage's body, his demon hunters, and a bunch of other stuff. So, pretty notable place. And one of the coolest things about this place is the door. The door has a bunch of runes that light up, and these things start spinning around. It's just really cool. And I'm not gonna lie, the door is the main reason I actually put this on the list. I love the way this door opens. And I had to learn more about the door, to be honest. So the door to the Vault of the Wardens is actually opened by the Darnassian phrase Anu Doranai Tala, which translates to "let my will be known." Did I say it right? Probably not, but I never say anything right, so. But aside from that, you know, it's this big cave area. It's very gloomy and rainy, and it's kind of just hidden away, which I think is really cool. And there's all these owls everywhere. It's a bunch of owl art. I still don't know why the wardens use owls. I tried to find something about it, and the only thing I found was a note that said wardens use owls. And I was like, well, yeah, obviously, but I don't know. I guess because it's like they're sneaky or stealthy. I don't know. Are owls stealthy? I guess they are. Yo, so I actually looked up some owl facts because I was like, all right, let's see if owls are actually stealthy. And it turns out they are very stealthy. So it says the nocturnal hunters have feathers that absorb aerodynamic sound and suppress the vibrations that occur when a bird beats its wings. During flight, an owl's feathers extract mechanical energy and convert it into heat. The result is perfect silence as it approaches a mouse, vole, or other prey. Yo, that shit's crazy. What? Anyway, that's number 9. Hey. And number 8 is the Wakecrest Manor dungeon entrance. And I think this place does a really good job kind of encapsulating the feeling of what you're going to experience when you go into this dungeon. You know what I mean? Like, when you walk here, you go, oh man, we're going into this crazy, evil, haunted house, right? Like, that's the vibe you get. And I think it does a really good job doing that. And that's what a dungeon entrance should do, right? It should set up the dungeon. And so when you get here, you've got the gate, which is all like, you know, these scrolls and the lanternfish and these like hanging kind of, I don't know, like magical things. And then you got the demon energy shooting out of the ground or whatever it is. And you got the barren trees with the, you know, kind of branching out. You would imagine a haunted house would have. And you got the pathway leading all the way up to the house and the door. It's a really cool vibe. And I think it does what it's supposed to do really well. You know, to me, it's not even about if the dungeon is good or not. Because I'm sure some people will be like, you pick this one, it's not even a good dungeon. Which, I think Wakecrest Manor was okay, but still. It's more about the setup. You know, it's like, is this dungeon entrance setting up the dungeon in a way that kind of makes me want to go in there, right? Does it make me go, ooh, you know, I want to step foot in that place and see what this is all about? And I think it does that pretty well. And so that's why it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is the Maradon entrance. And I picked this one because it's one of those dungeon entrances where I never really paid attention to it or really acknowledged it that much. I'd always just run up to the door and click it and run in. And now kind of taking a step back and looking at it, I'm like, what is that thing? Like, why is this the Maradon entrance? You know what I mean? Like, I figured it'd be a big centaur or something with all the centaur around here. And from looking it up, it appears it's an old troll god. And that's all I could find about it. There's like no, there's like nothing else. So if anybody knows, comment in the comment section down below. Because somebody said, oh, it's in the quest lore, but I couldn't find like any quest lore. So I'm like, I have no idea. But apparently it is an old troll god. And you click the door and you go into this big cave system, and it's got a bunch of crystals and water and kind of cool statues and artifacts in there. It's actually a pretty awesome kind of dungeon entrance area that really builds up the lore. And I'm not gonna lie, back in the day, I didn't really care about any of this. I was just like, let me get through. But now, kind of looking back on it, I'm like, yo, this is actually pretty cool. You know what I mean? And so I was looking up more lore, and it says, following the Horde's rise to power, Theradros worried that her centaur children might be driven to extinction. She infused them with her power and drove them to claim new territories outside of Desolus. Horde adventurers traveled to Desolus and learned from the Magrum clan, the only clan not loyal to Theradros, that the Maradon was the source of the corruption in the region. The Horde's champions helped the Magrum suppress the other clans in Desolus before traveling into the depths of the burial ground and defeating every creature inside of it, including Theradros. This ended the spreading corruption in the region and eased the Centaur's violent bloodlust. This also freed Zaytar's captive spirit, but he chose to remain in Maradon. pretty cool lore. I always just was like, oh man, this dungeon's long and boring, and it's in the place where we have to grind centaur rep. You know what I mean? But then when you actually don't care about doing any of that, and you can sit back and look at it from a different viewpoint, you're like, yo, this is pretty cool. And that's what this series is all about. And that's why this is number 7. 6. And number 6 is the Wailing Caverns dungeon entrance. And I had to put this on the list. One of the reasons is because whenever I think of the Wailing Caverns, I think of the dungeon entrance more than I think of the actual dungeon. And this really is one of those places with that. And I mean, it's just really cool. There's this big skull, like animal-like skull. I don't know if it's like a snake or a something. I don't know what it is, but I remember back in Classic WoW, you had to go up into the eyeball, and that's where you could get some like leatherworking pattern and some other stuff, and there's quests there, but that was pretty cool because you had to like walk around and fall down and go in there. And then you would go in, and there's like all these little quests you could do. There's like some stealthy goblin guy, and you had to kill raptors and stuff, and then it was just a big cavern, right? And then much like all the other things I mentioned, where it builds up the ambience for the actual dungeon, it really did that well. Like, you do all these things, and then you go into the actual Wailing Cavern, and you're like, woo, this is cool. And then you spend 10 years in there, and you come out, and you're like, I never want to go in there again. I thought about doing some lore for the Wailing Caverns, but like, dude, this episode is going to be like 30 minutes long if we do that. You know what? I'll give you a little synopsis. So there's Gnarlex. He goes into the caverns. He's like, this place is pretty cool. I need to meditate here, connect to the Emerald Dream. He tries to do it, but he connects to the Emerald Nightmare instead. And then all his friends go crazy, all the wildlife and the waters go insane and become corrupted, and then you have to fight them all. That's pretty much it. Which is still pretty cool. I always wondered why we had to fight the Druids of the Fang or whatever. I'm like, how'd they get here? That's like the substitute teacher version of the Wailing Caverns history. It's like you're back in class. Ricky, put that down, all right? Your parents might let you do that at home, but you're not doing it in my classroom, all right? 5. Number 5 is the Stormstout Brewery entrance, and I picked this one because I always see this building when I fly over the Valley of the Four Winds, and it's like impossible to miss, right? It feels like one of the biggest landmarks there. And it in itself is a dungeon entrance, right? Like, this building is all a dungeon entrance into the actual brewery. And when you go into the dungeon, it has some of the best lore. Like we just talked about, old gods and druids and the Emerald Dream and the Nightmare and all this stuff. And then this is just like, hey, Vermin and Hosen have overrun the brewery and they're destroying the beer and we gotta save it. So can you like go save it? And you're like, yeah, I guess. And so that's pretty much it. But the Stormstout Brewery has all those things I was talking about previously, right? Where it's like you walk up to the dungeon entrance and it feels like you're already a part of the dungeon by being there. You know what I mean? It has all the barrels and it has the hops and it has all these pandas kind of working and trying to, you know, make beer and can't wait to go drink it later. And, you know, you feel like, you know what? I got to help these pandas get drunk. You know what I mean? Because if I don't do it, their beer is ruined. And so this unbelievable lore paired up with this big landmark building and a lot of really cool aesthetics like the water mill and all that stuff make me put this at number 5. 4. Number 4 is the Dead Mines dungeon entrance. And I think a lot of people probably put Dead Mines at number 1 on their dungeon entrance because I'm sure there's a lot of nostalgia involved. And, you know, back in the day, this might have been the first dungeon you ever did, you know? I played Horde, so I don't have as much nostalgia with it, but I do have a pretty big appreciation for it because I think it does a really good job of setting up the dungeon, right? You just walk into this town and you are like, oh, it's just some town, right? But then you go into a building and you're like, oh, okay, so this leads somewhere, and it's almost like a secret passage, you know what I mean? And then before you know it, you're going down into these tunnels and into more tunnels, and then it goes down into these caves, and then there's like, oh, the actual dungeon entrance. Then you keep going down, right? And it really is the Dead Mines, right? You keep going deeper and deeper. And so I think it does a really good job setting that up. And it all starts from wandering into some building. Like back in the day, you have to think about that. Like now we see the building, we're like, oh, it's the Dead Mines town entrance, right? But back then, you didn't know anything, you know, you're just some random new player to World of Warcraft, and you're like, oh, here's a town, and you just stumble in here, and you're like, dude, what is this? Where am I going? And before you know it, you're like, this is crazy, you know? And it creates that big sense of adventure, and it makes you want to go to the Dead Mines, because you're like, dude, I stumbled across this building, and I wandered down here, and now there's this dungeon entrance, and like, you know, I gotta go here, you know what I mean? And luckily enough, if you're a lower level, you can still go there pretty quickly. So it's not even like you have to wait till level 40 or 50 or something, right? And I think that's really cool. And because of that, I wanted to put it higher up on the list because I think it really is one of the first ever dungeon entrances that people really ran into that made them want to go into a dungeon. And that's why it's number 4. 3. Number 3 is the Temple of Sothralis dungeon entrance, and this was actually going to be on the Pointless Top 10 Statues list, which I'll put in the cards up there if you want to click on it. But I was like, you know what? This would actually probably be better as a dungeon entrance. And I was like, why don't I just do dungeon entrances? And that's really what sparked this entire video. So I love this thing. It is a giant snake that keeps getting hit by lightning or electrified, whatever. I don't know what's happening, but it just looks really cool, especially at nighttime or the evening or dusk when all the little blue glowy lights are lit up and then it's just like, bzzz, and everything just gets zapped. It's just, I love it. It's fantastic. And it's really the landmark of the entire zone of Vol'dun. Fun little fact here, the snake symbol in the Temple of Sothralis and the Ouroboreal sash are inspired by the real-life Ouroboros symbol depicting a snake or dragon eating its own tail as a representation of the cycle of life and death. So, there you go. But overall, I just like the fact that it's a really big snake that keeps getting zapped by lightning. I think it's sick, and that's why it's number 3. 2. Number 2 are the Caverns of Time dungeon entrances, and there's a lot of dungeon entrances in the Caverns of Time, but I really like what they do because it ties into what I've been talking about this entire video, right? Where it kind of gives you a glimpse of what you're about to experience when you go into the dungeon. And it has to, because otherwise you're like, which dungeon is which, right? Unless you look at the map, which you can, but it's much more interactive and fun if you see it for yourself by walking up to it and being like, oh, I guess this is this place because it has things from that dungeon on the outside of it, right? And apparently all the things that are here are, this is according to Wowpedia again, the caverns are littered with artifacts and buildings such as statues, weapons, the half-buried bones of a gargantuan beast, a guard tower from Lordaeron, a dwarven domed building, a temple from Stormwind, dour orcish chieftain quarters, a stranded ship, armor from the reign of the first king of Stormguard, and the statue of an elven cleric. Apparently, Nosdormu spent years gathering and cataloging this mismatched collection of antiques. Which, when you hear that, you're like, oh, Nosdormu was collecting stuff. But in my mind, I pictured Nosdormu going into like an antique shop being like, ooh, this would fit very well in my cavern. But overall, I put this at number 2 because not only is it numerous dungeons that are kind of tied into this one area, but I always just really enjoyed the zone. Well, it's not even a zone, but I enjoyed this area. It just always made me feel like almost like a homey feel, like a very comforting feel. And I don't know why, because it's not like a comforting place, but I've always just really enjoyed being in the Caverns of Time. You know, even when they did the big WoW anniversary thing, I always enjoyed coming here. And so I put it higher on the list for that reason, but I think it belongs up here. And that's why it's number 2. 1. And number 1 is Zul'Farrak. I don't know if anybody saw that coming, but Zul'Farrak always just stood out to me as my favorite dungeon entrance, and I can always remember going back to my Billy character, my hunter back in the day, and I remember stumbling across Zul'Farrak and just seeing the entrance to it and being like, yo, this place is crazy, right? And it just right away, it tells you like, this is a dungeon, right? But being able to see behind it, being able to see like, oh, that's how the dungeon starts, and literally going into the door and seeing like, oh, wow, this is the dungeon, right? The merger of the two worlds, I think, was kind of mind-blowing to me. And that felt like, I think that was the first time it actually happened, because now there are some dungeons like that, but this was the first one that I feel like it actually did happen with it back in classic WoW, because I know now you can like fly over Zul'Gurub and like there's some other ones, but I always loved that. A little Zul'Farrak history for you. Tanaris used to be a jungle and territory of the Gurubashi Empire, and Zul'Farrak was a city there. When the Great Sundering shattered the ancient landmass, the area swiftly became the desert of Tanaris. The Faraki tribe of trolls were stranded here and eventually adapted to their harsh new environment, becoming sand trolls. But yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else to it. I always really enjoyed the Zul'Farrak entrance. It's one of the most notable in my mind. It's the one that always comes to my mind when I'm thinking of dungeon entrances, and I still love the dungeon to this day. I did it in Classic WoW, I did it in Vanilla WoW, I've done it so much, and I still love it. And that's why it's number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube lingo. Also, if you want to see more Pointless Top 10s, I'll put some on the screen. I'll also put a video I made where I tried to run a hardcore level 1 WoW character across Azeroth. That was pretty dumb, so check that out. Okay? Okay. See ya! Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the giant dwarf statue at the entrance of Ironforge, and I always thought this was just some random dwarf statue that was like, hey, welcome to Ironforge, here's a dwarf, and I was like, okay. But apparently no, this is Modimus Anvilmar. I think that's how you say it, Modimus, M-O-D-I-M-U-S, Modimus Anvilmar, and he was the last High King of the United Dwarves of Ironforge prior to the War of the Three Hammers. And an immense statue of Modimus stands guard at the gates of Ironforge. So yeah, this is Modimus Anvilmar. It's actually a lot cooler when you realize, like, oh damn, this guy's like one of the most notorious dwarves of all time. And I just thought it was some random dude. Like not even a random dude. I thought it was just some like generic dwarf. They were like, hey, you know what'd be cool? If you walk in the Ironforge, you see a big dwarf, and everyone was like, yeah, right. There's also the small village Anvilmar in Coldridge Valley, which is, you know, probably named after him, I would imagine, but there's probably other things named after him. There's probably a server, there's probably a whole bunch of other stuff, but it's always fun to learn some little lore tidbits like that, you know what I mean? And then you get a new appreciation. And instead of walking into Ironforge and being like, hey, there's a dwarf, I'll be like, yo, there's Modimus Anvilmar. And then I'll go about my day and probably completely forget about him. But now you know. And that's number 10. 9. Number 9 is the big eagle statue at Airy Peak. And I always thought the statue was really cool whenever I'd be at Airy Peak and you look up and it's just this giant stone eagle. And I'm like, dude, that actually looks pretty sick. Like, when I thought of the Pointless Top 10 Statues list, this was one of the things that I really wanted on the list, just because I always remember seeing it dating back all the way to Classic WoW. And, you know, reading more about it, it's actually really interesting. So Airy Peak is the capital of the Wildhammer clan, which, you know, we just talked about dwarves. And it's located in the Hinterlands, which originally was going to be named Airy Peaks, but then they changed it to be the Hinterlands. And then Airy Peak became the capital. And so Airy Peak is the home of the Hinterlands Wildhammer dwarves. They broke off from the rest of the Dwarven society after the War of the Three Hammers, and following the defeat of Tharazan, the Wildhammers returned home to Grim Batal. A bunch of stuff happened, and essentially, because of the horrific underground battles the Wildhammers were forced to fight against the dwarves, the Dark Iron Dwarves, the Wildhammers chose to build most of their dwellings above ground instead of burrowing into the mountains as a typical Dwarven design. So, and that's another reason they have a bunch of griffins, and they're flying around with griffins and eagles and all that stuff. So I just thought that was actually pretty sick lore. The fact that, you know, they were so tired of fighting underground, and they have like all this post-traumatic stress from fighting underground against the Dark Iron Dwarves, and they're like, dude, let's just build our capital on top of the mountain. And they're like, yeah, right? And then they just fly around on, you know, griffins, and they got the eagles and everything. It's just awesome. I love it. That's actually really cool. I didn't know that until I was researching all that for Pointless Top 10. So look at that. On top of this being one of my favorite places to see throughout the years of World of Warcraft, it's actually got some pretty cool lore. And that's why it's number 9. 8. Number 8 is this broken dragon statue in Wintergrasp, and there's really no lore or story behind this statue. I looked for some, but I couldn't really find anything. But it's one of those statues that I see in the game and I feel like is really underappreciated, because I never even really knew about this statue, and somebody mentioned it and I went to look at it and I was like, yo, this is actually a really cool statue, like a big dragon statue. And I feel like people that are in Wintergrasp, you're just kind of, you know, AFKing, fighting at the gates of Wintergrasp, and or fighting for vehicles, doing all this stuff, and you don't take the time to just look up and be like, dude, there's a big-ass broken dragon statue over there. You know what I mean? Especially now we're in the current expansion. We're in his dragon flight. So I was like, you know what? This is probably a great time to show off this dragon statue. Plus, Wintergrasp was always one of my favorite things to do. I played some in Classic Wrath, but it wasn't the same as when you actually did it back in the day, and it was like a big open zone, and there, you know. But it's whatever. I mean, either way, I wanted to shout this statue out, give it some love. And there's really nothing else to it. I think it's just pretty cool. 7. Number 7 are the big flying cat statues in Uldum. And I wanted to pick a statue in Uldum because Uldum has so many statues in it. Like, you could probably just do an entire pointless top 10 of Uldum statues, to be honest. But I thought these were probably the coolest. I really love the flame that they're holding. And both these big winged cat creatures. I think they're Sphinx. I don't even know, but you know, they're just standing up there over the mountains, kind of overlooking the entire zone. And I just thought it was pretty neat, pretty sick. I was going to say sick again, but I feel like I've been saying sick this entire time. Like, oh, that's pretty sick. I don't know. I just think they're cool. That's really it. I tried to look up some lore on them, but the only thing I found was somebody just saying this place has more statues than Stormwind. So that's how you know. There's a lot of statues here, which, by the way, I was going to include Stormwind in this list, but I just made pointless top 10 bridges, and I put a bunch of statues from Stormwind on the bridges in that video, and I was like, well, I want to do another thing where I'm just doing a bunch of statues in Stormwind. So listen, pointless top 10, it's always going to have things that people say that I left out that would be like, Crendor, you missed out this statue. You missed that statue. How could you forget about this statue? All right, calm down. You can make your own top 10 list, okay? And then there you go. But as for me, these are on it. And they're number 7. 6. Number 6 is the Statue of Liberty, which is located in the Loch Modan dig site area with a bunch of trogs all around. This is actually an old Easter egg that everybody always comes across, and they're like, dude, I found the Statue of Liberty. I've seen it, like, all over. Whenever I would search for Statue of Liberty, which was literally, you know, this past week, because I was trying to find information on it, there's a whole bunch of threads being like, dude, the Statue of Liberty. And this is actually a reference to Planet of the Apes, where they come across a Statue of Liberty, and he's like, oh my god, it's Earth. Which I always just think of the Simpsons episode with Dr. Zaius and Dr. Zaius. So anyway, this is actually one of the Statue of Liberties. There used to be another big Statue of Liberty way back in, I think, the beta of World of Warcraft, or, you know, before it came out. And it was like a big Statue of Liberty in the ocean in Stranglethorn, and then I guess they removed that. So either way, I thought this was a cool statue. You know, it's a little bit of an Easter egg type thing, and I was like, hey, that should be on the list. So I put it at number 6. 5. Number 5 is the Raven Crest Monument in Azshara, and this one was recommended by a lot of people. They're like, you gotta do the Raven Crest Monument, so I did. And it's got some interesting lore behind it, so I'm going to read you a bit about it from Wowpedia, and then the speculation behind it. So, the Ravencrest Monument marks the remains of a huge statue in Azshara, referred to by Torg Tookrush as an ancient night elven colossus, located southeast of the ruins of Eldorath. What is left of the time-worn statue rests atop the cliffs on the tip of Azshara's southern point, overlooking the Great Sea. The Ravencrest Monument cannot be accessed by the sea, and only the broken-off legs still stand, with various other parts scattered on the ground around them. Presumably, the rest has become buried or sunk beneath the sea below. So, that's the Ravencrest Monument, right? It's just this broken statue. It's scattered all around. But people are like, well, who is this, right? Is this some notable night elf? Is this actually Ravencrest? Like, who is this? So, a common theory is that the monument was raised in honor of Lord Kurtalos Ravencrest, who led the mortal forces after the fall of Zin Ashari, Suramar, and countless other cities against the Burning Legion during the War of the Ancients. However, the remains of the statue appear to depict a female night elf, though it may be simply due to model recycling, and based on its proximity to Eldorath, a city which predates the War of the Ancients and was destroyed during the Great Sundering, it is quite possible that the monument also predates the war and was raised in honor of some other notable night elf named Ravencrest. The monument's out-of-the-way location and state of despair also intimate that the subject is not Kurtalos. Is that a word? Intimate? It just says intimate. Intimate? Whatever. Ultimately, there's simply not enough information to confirm the Ravencrest Monument refers to Kurtalos Ravencrest. So this is actually really cool, because it's like nobody even knows who this is. It's just this big statue in Azshara, and people are like, I think it's of this person, but we actually don't know. And I think I always really enjoy that about games, like just some hidden mystery that nobody really knows. And that's why it's number 5. 4. Number 4 is the statue of Lu Lang, and there's actually 2 statues of Lu Lang. One is like this crazy wooden tree statue, which, you know, everybody always thinks statues got to be built out of stone, but I mean, you could have a tree statue. What's wrong with that? And then the other one is this stone statue by the Turtle Beach, and there's a bunch of turtles all around it. There's actually some interesting lore behind Lu Lang. So Lu Lang was just this really well-known Pandaren scholar and explorer, and he was the first of his people to leave Pandaria in the years following the Sundering. So he was filled with a sense of wanderlust, and apparently the Chinese word for wandering is Lu Lang. Explains why they named him that. And he sought to travel beyond the mists and still be able to return. He realized that sea turtles always returned to shore where they were first born, and thus he traveled to Turtle Beach in the Krasarong Wilds on the Pandarian southern coast, where he befriended the sea turtle that he named Shenzin Su, after the merchant Shenzin. So that explains why the statue of him with the turtles is by all the turtles on the Turtle Beach, because that's where he traveled to, right? The turtle carried Lu Lang beyond the mist to the world he knew waited beyond. The common thought of the time was that only Pandaria had not been destroyed in the Sundering, and so Lu Lang was considered to be damaged in the head for thinking otherwise. This guy's crazy. This was proven to be incorrect when Lu Lang returned on Shenzin Su 5 years later, bringing with him tales of mysterious lands. And so overall, Lu Lang, you know, one of the first real big Pandaren explorers that went out and was like, yo guys, there's like orcs and trolls and stuff out there. You should go see it. And they're like, oh, okay. And, you know, they did. And that's why these statues are number 4. 3. And number 3 is the Gennaro's Point statue. That's right, number 3. I bet everybody watching this was like, oh, Crendor's going to put the old Gennaro's Point statue at number 1 because it's the thing you see at every Pointless Top 10, and it's the statue he flies by. It only makes sense that in a statue list it would be number 1, which is why you're wrong. So this statue is on Gennaro's Point, which is named after Rio de Janeiro because it is a statue in reference to the Christ the Redeemer statue. But it's a goblin, as you might expect at Booty Bay. And I mean, listen, it's a fantastic statue. It's why I love showing it off all the time. It's always one of the staples of the things you think about when you think of Booty Bay. You know, it's just, it's a classic for World of Warcraft. And so it had to be up here on the list. But I wanted to take the time to talk a bit about Pointless Top 10 while we have this statue here, because I realized a few Pointless Top 10s ago, I was like, guys, everybody keeps saying the things on the list aren't pointless. And I was like, well, yeah, that's because the list itself is pointless. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, right? Like we're making pointless lists about things. That's why this is Pointless Top 10. But then I realized while I was listening to a Pointless Top 10 that in the intro, I say a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. And I was like, wait, hold on a second. In the intro, I say we're making lists out of pointless things. But nowadays, I say that the list is the pointless thing and the things aren't pointless. So I'm like, which one is it? And that's where it leaves us right now. Which one is it? And I'm going to give you a proper answer right here, okay? Pointless Top 10 is like a piece of art. It's up for interpretation by the viewer. Maybe you think the list is pointless. Maybe you think the things on the list are pointless. Maybe you think none of it's pointless. But in an essence, that is in itself pointless. And I don't know what I'm talking about. So that's number 3. 2. Number 2 is a bit of an unconventional one, but it is the Utgard Pinnacle. Specifically, not a statue of the Utgard Pinnacle, but when you walk into the instance, there's this big treasure room, and there's a bunch of gold and stuff all over, but there's statues all over. And the only reason I know about this is because I farmed this place so many times trying to get the blue proto drake, which I still haven't. I'm on attempt like 130. All right. And there's actually some really cool statues in here. There's the Ravencrest Monument, which is on this list. I don't know if this is like a miniature version of the real one or a fake one, or I don't know how they got it. There's a statue of what I think is Queen Ajara. There's a statue of like Sylvanas or a blood elf hunter, or maybe her sister, something like that. There's a Scarlet Monastery guy, or like a priest. I thought he was a pirate at first, I'm not gonna lie. There's a Stranglethorn statue head, like probably by Zul'Gurub. There's a centaur guy that I have no idea who he is. He's just some centaur statue. And then there's some human knight guy with like a chalice or something on his chest. I have no idea who that is either. So if you know who any of these ones that I don't know, did I even say that correctly. If you know any of these that I don't, put it in the comments section. Be like, oh, that's Uther's brother, Guther. It is I, Guther. And he's like the lesser known brother, and he's, you know, he got a statue made after himself because he got really jealous of Uther. And he's like, this is my statue. And they're like, nobody cares. And then somebody found it, and they're like, is that Uther? And they're like, yeah, throw it in the treasure room with the others. And then that's Guther. Guther's statue, everybody. That's number 2. 1. And number 1 are the Dark Portal statues. And after really thinking about it, I was like, you know what? These statues have to be number 1 because there's just so much mystery, so much lore, so much just nostalgia behind these statues. Like when you booted up World of Warcraft for the first time, all the way back in like 2004, 2005, these were the statues you saw on the login screen, right? Like, boom, there they were. I mean, these were here in Warcraft 3. The Dark Portal did have the hooded statues, but in Warcraft 2, apparently they did not have the statues. And even if you do the opening the Dark Portal dungeon, there are no statues there. So that's really interesting that they used to not have them, but then they added them in. And everyone's like, well, then who put them there? Who added them in? So a lot of people said, you know, they're Medivh. They're probably an apparition of Medivh that appeared to Gul'dan and instructed him how to build the portal. But then, you know, why is there so many of him, right? And apparently they're also located all over. Like, people have seen them in the Black Temple. They're at the Altar of Storms. You know, you see them all. I mean, there's one at the entrance of the Caverns of Time, which I always thought was really funny. You walk in, and it's like, boom, there's one of them. People have said maybe they're just warlocks, right? That's a theory. Somebody else had the theory that they're Gen 1 Death Knights. Like, there's really just a lot of mystery behind it. And, you know, leave your comments down below. What do you think they are? Because I've looked all over and, you know, I read all these theories, but, like, it really just boils down to, I think, nobody knows. And, again, I think that's really cool. You know, kind of like the Ravencrest Monument. It's just something in the game that's there. We know it's there. We've seen it all over. And yet, we really just don't know. And that's why it's number 1. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Also, if you want to see some other Pointless Top 10s, I'll put them on the screen right there. We got boars, we got skeletons, we got lakes, we got a whole bunch of them. Check them all out. We also got Patreon. If you want to support me over there, I got a whole bunch of stuff on Patreon. And YouTube members get a Q&A every month, so you can check that out as well. Okay? Okay. See ya. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 are Hellboars. And I put Hellboars on the list because I always just think of Hellboars when I think of boars. Like, if I go World of Warcraft boars, my mind instantly is like Hellboars. Like, it's one of the main boars I think of. So I was like, all right, well, they gotta be on the list, right? So a little more fun facts about Hellboars. According to Wowpedia, they are spiny mottled boars that burn with different colored flames. They come in a variety of looks, possibly related to the amount of exposure they've had to the demonic energies of the twisting nether. Hellboars were once ordinary boars, now mutated by demonic influence. In Azeroth, the Hellboar is native only to the Blasted Lands. The Outlands variety on Hellfire Peninsula show far larger signs of demonic blood. Their hides are brightly colored and twisted into vile parody of boars. Hellboars also started appearing on alternate Draenor after the corruption of the Tannin Jungle. So, you know, they're just demonic boars, right? They're just corrupted demonic boars walking around, and when you really think about it, that's kind of scary, right? These crazy demonic boars running around. I even see a quote here that says, veterans of the battle for Outlands Hellfire Peninsula are traumatized by the thoughts of the beasts to this day, or these beasts. From Mount Journal entry for Death Tusk Fellboar. So yeah, these things are scary. And they're also number 10. 9. Number 9 are Fellboars. And you might say to yourself, Crendor, Fellboars look a lot like Hellboars. And that's because they are. Fellboars are Hellboars found in Shadow Moon Valley. They can go into a frenzy, and when they do, they grow, turn red, and deal increased damage. So, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I really like these green Hellboars, and it's one of the reasons I wanted both on the list, but I was like, you know what? These are green, and they're in Shadow Moon Valley, and I just like the color green slightly more than the red Hellboars. And you know what? These also turn red when they fight, so I mean, there you go. Also a fun fact, Oranok Tornheart has managed to domesticate a few to help him farm for tubers. So these Fellboars are actually useful to the Horde. I don't know if the Alliance have domesticated them yet, but the Orc vendor, the Orc general goods and drink vendor managed to domesticate a few, so that's kind of funny. I was just thinking of the contract, like somebody, like we just mentioned, was like, these are the most dangerous creatures I've ever seen in my life. And then, meanwhile, this dude's like, yeah, I got one as a pet. He, like, finds tubers. And that's why they're number 9. 8. Number 8 is Puffer. And Puffer is a boar that is one of Rexar's companions located in Breaker's Crown in Gorgron. And Puffer is actually a name that is likely a reference to Huffer, that is Rexar's boar companion in the main universe. So, if you look up Huffer, Huffer accompanies Rexar in the Blade's Edge Mountains, where he helps a Horde adventurer steal Grolok's sack by leading Grolok on a merry chase to distract him. And when Rexar is assigned as a combat ally in Legion, Huffer can be summoned to accompany them. And Huffer is the companion in the Hearthstone Animal Companion card when you play Rexar's Animal Companion thing. But Puffer is the new edition, I guess, of Huffer. And you get it, like Huff, Puff. I get it. But here's the thing. I think Puffer looks pretty cool. It reminds me of the Pumbaa from The Lion King. And I think Pumbaa, or I mean, I think Pumbaa's got the best skin, folks. And that's why I say Pumbaa is number 8. 7. Number 7 is Princess the Boar, and Princess is in the Stonefield farm in the Elwyn Forest, and is one of the oldest boars in the game, pretty much, next to all the other boars. She was way back in Classic WoW. She used to have 2 pigs that followed her around and protected her, but now it's just 1. That was changed in patch 2.3. In Cataclysm, she moved from Brackenwall Pumpkin Patch to Stonefield Farm, and no longer has an entourage, and got a new model with a ribbon. And then in Legion, scaled from level 4 to 20, previously was level 9. So Princess has changed quite a bit over the years. But you know what? She is still probably one of the most notable boars in World of Warcraft, and that's why I had to put her on the list. To me, I don't really have a lot of nostalgia. I'd never really played humans that much. I kind of remember this quest, because I did... You know, here and there I'd make a human and be like, wow, but, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, you got to put Princess on the list, right? You got to put the Elwyn Forest boars. And so I decided to kind of encapsulate all that right here with Princess. So that's why I put Princess at number 7. 6. Number 6 is Laytusk. And Laytusk is this really cool looking boar in northern Azuna with a bunch of like blue energy stuff flowing through them. I don't even know. But they're a part of a quest for a feast fit for Odin, where you have to acquire Thunderhorn Flank, Spine Sever Spine, and Laytusk Steak. But aside from that, I think Laytusk is just a really cool, unique looking boar. And there's really not much about them. I was trying to research, see if there's any cool stories behind Laytusk or anything like that. And there's really not. They're just a part of a quest to feed Odin. So that's really it. But, you know, I think Laytusk deserves more than that. And, you know, Laytusk is a pet that is, well, not a pet, like in terms of like a battle pet, but a lot of hunters tame Laytusk as a pet because it's a pretty easy, what am I even saying? It's a pretty easy pet to tame. It is an easable pet to tame. And yeah, that's it. There's nothing else, but I think they look cool. And that's why they're number 6. 5. Number 5 are the Cold Snout boars, and I love these boars, man. They're just snow boars, you know? They're located in the Frostfire Ridge, and it's just a big happy family, right? You got there's 2 Cold Snout sows? I don't know how you say this. And then they have a bunch of the Cold Snout piglets with them. And they're just a happy family, so... it always bothers me too in Blizzard. Like one of the only quests they have is kill wildlife. So it's just like you just go out like go kill these happy families of boars. Like I don't want to do that, you know. I always hate when they do that. That happened with like ducks and Dragonflight too. Like maybe it's like kill the ducks. Like I don't want to kill the ducks. So you know whatever. Besides the point. So I love these boars. I love them in the snow. And they're, they're just living their life, man. That's it. They're probably exploring more than anybody did in Draenor, because they're not in their garrison. And that's it. The only quest that they're a part of is to be killed. So that kind of sucks. But either way, that's why I wanted to put them higher up on the list. You know what I mean? These are unappreciated boars, and they deserve to be higher up on the list for how cool they are. And that's it. I got nothing else. I really like these. They're number 5. 4. Number 4 are the Plagued Swine, and Plagued Swine are boars that are found in the Eastern Plague Lands in Terrordale. And according to Wowpedia, they have a startling undead appearance, but they are considered beasts. And one of them is held in a cage in Shadowfang Keep during the Love is in the Air event. And they are an objective of one quest. There's one quest that these boars are there for, and it is a fate worse than butchery. And it's actually pretty sad. I didn't realize this. I don't know if I've ever done this quest, or if I did, I just skipped over it like most people do. There's like, click quest, accept, kill thing, complete, move on, right? It's pretty sad. So here we go. It says, the people, this is the description of the quest. Kill 9 plague swine. The people of Terrordale, they were sick. Then they turned bad. Definitely not good times. The pigs, though, they also got sick. What did pigs do to deserve to get sick? Ha ha ha, nothing. People I can forget about, but the bad pigs still make me sad. If you kill them, though, I might get happy. And then while you're doing it, he says, I cry for the poor pigs. And then when you complete the quest, it says, I see them. Can you, the little pig spirits, on their way to the great sty in the sky? So I read that. I was like, dude, this is pretty dark, kind of sad. But overall, I mean, these pigs are still pretty cool, right? They may be suffering on the inside, but who isn't? And, they got pretty cool lore, I mean, they've probably got better lore than some of the characters in Shadowlands and Battle for Azeroth. So, overall, great boars, and they're number 4. 3. Number 3 are the Crag Boars of Dunmorrow, and I picked the Crag Boars because, first, I love Dunmorrow. So part of it's tied into the zone. Again, snow boars, even though they're not really like snow boars like the previous ones were. But I needed some sort of starting zone boar. And obviously all of them are very nostalgic. People always mention the Elven Forest boars or the Durotar boars or the Night Elf zone boars, right? There's a lot of boars. But for some reason, I think these just stand out above them all to me. And I don't know if it's because of Dunmorrow, but I think it's because of the beer-basted boar ribs quest. I'm not even gonna lie. I think that quest specifically just always stands out in my mind. I even mentioned it in one of my first videos I ever made, the It's a Hard Gnome Life video back like 14 years ago. My God. And, I think that is the reason. I think it just stands out. So, I mean, that recipe, I think it's even made it into the WoW cookbook. But, aside from that, I think the boars do look cool. They got models updated in Shadowlands, so they do look better than they used to. And, they're your standard boar, but there's something nice about that. Something very nostalgic, very simple, and that's why I had to put them on the list, and I figured number 3 was a good spot. 2. Number 2 are the Shardhide boars, and Shardhide boars are found in the Blade's Edge Mountains, and believe it or not, are hellboars. So you might be like, Crendor, this is the 3rd hellboar you've put on this list. And you know what? You'd be correct. But I think they have the best color scheme. Like, I really love the kind of purple skin with the green eyes. I think it's really cool, and I think it fits the Blade's Edge Mountains in this area. I just love it. And so, maybe I just really like hellboars. Maybe that's what we're getting at. But some people are going to be like, you just put 3 hellboars on the list. This is blah, blah. There's so many other boars you could have included. Listen, all right, I get it. But this is the point of the list, is that there is no point. This is a pointless list. A lot of people get that confused. They're like, are these the most pointless boars in World of Warcraft? No, the boars themselves are not pointless. The list is the thing that is pointless. And so a lot of people get confused with that because... the whole reason I made this series is because everybody's making top 10 lists, like top 10 things you won't believe that, right? And so I was like, well, I'm going to make my own list, but I'm going to just straight up be like, yo, this is a pointless list, right? These are just dumb lists that I'm making that don't really matter. So if I put some hellboar at number 2, that doesn't matter because it's literally just my list in my opinion, which, is pointless. And that's the point. Is that there is no point. So they're number 2. 1. And number 1 is Loshal the Boar. And Loshal is maybe one of my favorite number 1s we've ever done for a pointless top 10. Because when I found Loshal, it actually blew my mind. And I'm sure there's many of you out there that it's going to blow your minds as well. Because I was like, I didn't even know this existed. So when I was looking for boars, I was like, let's see, Loshal, never heard of them. And I saw it was in the starting zone. And I was like, what? And then I went there and I couldn't even find him. And then I realized he's just this tiny boar running around. And I was like, what? Like, he's smaller than a hare, like a literal rabbit. He's smaller than a rabbit. And so I looked it up, and apparently he is the object of the defunct quest Swine Hunting, which was intended to teach hunters how to use track beasts. And it just never made it into the game. But for some reason, they're like, just keep Loshal in there. So they made this quest where you learn how to track beasts, and you would probably, you know, try to find Loshal or like click on him or something like that. And then they just didn't do it. But they just kept him in running around. And so he's just been running around till this day. And I feel like a lot of people just don't even know he's there. Like, and he had his model updated in Shadowlands because he was a boar. And a lot of boars got updated in Shadowlands. So he's just been having a great time running around. And apparently, the boar will grow to regular size if tamed. So if you're like, oh, I want him as a pet, he will grow to a regular size. But then you'll have Loshal as your pet. So all these things combined make me put Loshal at number 1, and hopefully you learned something, because I learned something, and even if you didn't, we all get to see a tiny boar run around in circles. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube lingo, and check out the other Pointless Top 10s if you haven't seen them. We just did Bridges the other week, and there's a whole bunch of other ones you might have not seen, so go check those out. Okay? Okay. See ya! Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the Valley of Heroes Bridge in Stormwind, and I put this bridge on the list because it's a very prominent bridge, right? It's a very historic bridge. Most people, when they're first creating characters in World of Warcraft, especially if you're Alliance, you're gonna walk across this bridge and be like, oh man, I'm walking into this giant city, right? You've got the cathedral in the background, you got all the statues of all the old historic figures all around, and it's a really cool entrance and a really cool bridge overall. You know, you got the stone ground, and it's neat. You know, I didn't play the Alliance back in the day. I mainly played Horde, so I don't have as much nostalgia about it, but you know, you can't not know about the Stormwind Bridge, and because of that, I put it at number 10. 9. Number 9 are the High Mountain Peak bridges, and High Mountain Peak is a large mountain located in southern High Mountain, and it is the highest point in the Broken Isles. I did not know that. Fun little fact there. And the mountain trails and outposts are maintained by the Skyhorn tribe. Only 2 settlements can be found on High Mountain Peak, Greystone and the secluded Ironhorn Enclave. But it's a really cool area. I mean, you got the snow blowing around. You've got the sky that looks amazing with all the stars and the Aurora Borealis looking type effect going on up there, but it looks phenomenal. And the bridges, I think, really add to that atmospheric environment, if this makes sense. Because, you know, when you're up in the mountains, you know, there's the snow and the cold and everything's blowing around, and you have these, like, long, creaky bridges, right? You know for a fact, if you're walking on one of these bridges, it's, like, swaying back and forth, and it's like, right? And you know at any moment that rope is going to snap. If this was in a movie, 100% that one of these ropes is snapping, and they're, like, hanging from the mountainside, being like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Anyway, that's number 9. 8. Number 8 is the Jade Forest Bell Bridge, and I couldn't find any information on the Jade Forest Bell Bridge, but I mean, the only information you need is it's got a giant bell. I did find an article on a Windspire Bridge, but those are different bridges. Those aren't this specific, like, bell bridge. Like, I don't know why, but this bridge just stands out because it's got a giant bell. You know what I mean? Like, I did look at those other bridges, and I was like, well, they look like these bridges, which are very cool. They got the, like, temple shrine style walkways and stuff, and the stairs, and really cool architecture, and, you know, stone walkways and stuff, but this one has a giant bell. And as you can see, there's, like, some panda kids with mallets. Looks like they want to whack the bell. There's some guy also staying in there. So I honestly don't remember if there's anything special with this bell involving any quests, and I didn't really know what to look for. But if there is, let me know in the comments section down below. I'd love to know. But I mean, just in the grand scheme of things, it's a really cool bridge, right? You know, you fly by, you see the really big bell, you can, you know, fly around it, and it's neat. So that's why it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is the Dunbaldar Bridge in Alterac Valley. And when I was thinking of bridges, this one is... All right, the show's over. Show's over. Sorry, everybody. Great fun had. A lot of fun. Great time. But substitute teaching's over. Hopefully you enjoyed today's class. If you're curious and you're like, hey, I was watching Pointless Top 10 Bridges. Hold on, here you go. Hold on, stop. You can go watch the end of it right there. Crazy. Thanks again to the Sloth. Really good job. I heard he was a bit problematic, so sorry about that. But I can't control him. So thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow, maybe, depending. I'm feeling a little better today. I still got my eye strain stuff, though. So I think tomorrow I'm hoping that'll be, my eye strain stuff will be a bit better. But my actual cognitive functions a bit better now. So that's nice. So either way, thanks for watching. I might see you tomorrow. Maybe for a little bit. We'll see. Or blindfolded playthroughs. That's probably going to hurt my head too. All right. See ya.